Everyone has something to share, in either wisdom, story, or logic. And it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people, unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and store of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody here back to the Missing Link. Today we are excited to have Paul Unslaved here with us. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well, Jesse. A powerful intro. I'll give you that right off the bat.
Awesome. So why don't you start off with telling us about yourself for anybody that may be hearing you here for the first time?
Okay, so here I am in my office, as I affectionately call it, which has become my car because I am living in a tent right now and using my car as my office because we are on the land, so to speak, right? We're getting everything together. We're up on a property. We got 40 acres, a beautiful property with a seasonal creek as the train goes by me. Yeah, so that's basically what I'm up to now, lately, right? It's just trying to become self-sustainable, trying to work on myself, like I have been for a while, get everything in line, get back to source, right? As they say, resource. Um, so yeah, I mean, where they would know me originally from, if they know me at all, it's very likely would be legal and lawful stuff, right? The interactions with the public servants. A lot of folks originally caught on to what I was doing. That was a facet of my life, and it was how the channel, my YouTube channel started, was basically upholding the law, upholding rights, our freedoms, to just give a very basic boil down of that. But yeah, going into the words and terms and the understandings of who and what we are and how we got where we are, where we're going, how do we get there? And not trying to, but being an active part in the process of creating the change that we would want to see, I would think, right? If we value our rights, if we have certain value systems, certain principles, ethics, morals, objective logic, that's where I come from. I'm kind of giving you, I guess, a gestalt, so to speak.
So are we then, with these rights, sovereign?
Well, that's a term. There's a lot of different sort of understandings and connotations around that term. I tend to stay away from that term. There's some folks who tell you we are sovereign. We have the ability to govern ourselves. There's other folks who have an understanding that the term sovereign means we are above the law, right? And my understanding is we are never above the law because universal law is in existence. It's written within us. It's an inherent part of who and what we are as a being incarnated, a consciousness awareness being incarnated with the ability to experience empathy, right? It's one of the qualities that makes humans, right, in quotes, because again, the word human in law means a monster. But, man and woman, masculine and feminine, it's what makes us who and what we are separate from the animal kingdom. Some say, I would say that even the animals exhibit empathetic qualities and are able to connect and bridge the gap and see a oneness, self and self, so to speak, right? And that's part of what I'm doing now. I mean, the sovereign being, I guess you could say, is the being out on the land, involved with the supernatural, around nature, in and amongst it, and becoming self-sustainable and developing, like I said, ethics, morals, principles, value systems. That's what I consider, if you want to call it a sovereign being, a self-governing being who's only accountable to what men and women would call God, right, or universal law.
So tell us about your situation. You got yourself a piece of land and now you're helping make it sustainable?
Yeah, so again, my understanding of the way this all works, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. If you commit yourself to a certain lifestyle, to a certain discipline, the universe starts to open up to you. Different opportunities present themselves, and then you have an ability to create a change that again we say we want to see. I'm big on cliches and sort of phrases and sayings that have always seemed to be true throughout the ages, right? I always go back to that as one of my principles or my practices in my own life. So yeah, we're on the land. Um, that's to me, it's a no-brainer at this point, right? This isn't my thing or my lifestyle necessarily. Like I created it, I'm just living it. It's like the Christed being in the scripture said, the truth, life, and way. If we're living our life based on truth in a way that is sustainable, respectable, trustworthy, equitable, honor-able, right? Accountable, response-able, all these words that we grow up hearing, but it doesn't seem we ever truly embody them fully, right? So that's what I'm working on in my own life is trying to embody these these words and terms and these understandings that make us a man or a woman, right? Truly.
Wiggy here from our Facebook is asking if you're the guy who did the video driving legally without a license.
So some might say that it was legal, some might say it was illegal. I'm not as much concerned whether it was legal or illegal because I'm not a member of the legal society. However, yes, I did drive without a license lawfully, right? Based on the right to travel. It's a secured right, protected in the contract known as the Constitution, where we are not bound by that. We are not parties to that. But these public servants are because they swear to that. So again, if we understand that in just even U.S. code, we go to the federal codes, which still isn't even law. It's there to bind servants, agent and agency. That's what policy and code is there for. Just like at Walmart, they have policy and code for all the agents to be bound by that and to not get out of line and get out of place. So even in U.S. code, it lays out the idea of personage and how this the whole legal system essentially relates to personage. It's a contractual, voluntary opting in system where we don't know it, but we're actually contracting as personage. The all caps corpse, right? The corpse oration. So we go into court, and this is my latest thing now, just a kind of simplified breakdown. We go into court, they say we summon you to appear in person. You show up, they say, is this you? The all caps name, yes, that's me. So now you've appeared in person. The agent stands up on the other side, the prosecutor calling himself the people, right? So the people have rights. The persons have duties and obligations. So we've swapped roles. If you see how simple and beautiful that is. So now the people is in charge, telling us all what they're going to do, how they're going to move the court. And because you've identified, right, which identify means to take on something other than what you originally are. Identify as a man, identify as a woman. This is big nowadays. So they get you to identify rather than as a man or woman, as a person, while the people beat you up and you have to cover up. We have to reverse those roles back, express the public trust and how we're the beneficiaries of that. Man and woman created the corporation known as government, and all agent and agencies within it are accountable to not only us, but to God, but also to that original contract known as the Constitution, right? And this is what we term as a common law land. So, yes, I went off on a whole big trail there, a whole big layout. But yes, I am that man who was moving my property, no license, registration, insurance, and plates.
So you're in your property right now. Is you still, move from place to place freely without any license, without any insurance? And do you still get hassled from time to time?
Yes, I still do so, and absolutely I do, and absolutely not. I do not do so freely. It seems as of late, just a few weeks ago, they took the property again, but all is well and good. Necessity is the mother of invention. So as we move along, and as they keep taking property and challenging me, they only seek and serve to get me tighter on my game, right? So moving forward, I do have, I wouldn't call it a new system, but I do have a new way that I have the property recorded and still no license, registration, insurance, and plates because that's my right to do so. Nobody can force me into a contract. There's many laws, again in quotes, codes, and different layers of what we call law, the legal system, that even express this, directly that these folks have no right to regulate the comings and goings of private men and women. They only have a right to regulate the public, which are folks who stand in a certain capacity, mainly citizenship. That's one of the capacities: a person, a resident, a citizen, an inhabitant of a municipality. These are all folks who are part of what the political folks will call the unspoken social contract. So they'll even kind of make these veiled statements, letting everyone know that whether you know it or not, you're involved in a corporate contract, and that's why you have to follow policy. And it's a subversion of the original law of this land. So it's just about educating, man. As I move around, I have conversations with the public servants, like I did yesterday, because I'm on trust land. So sheriff rolled up. We had a great conversation. We went from "you couldn't be here" to I'm going to stay, and he's going to go look up what I told him, because again, a trust has three elements. So if I'm on state trust land, who's the beneficiary, right? He's the trustee, so I must be the beneficiary. That land only exists in trust to be upkept by the agency, so when man and woman comes along, they can use it.
So a couple weeks ago, you get stopped. You come across an officer who didn't like, obviously, what you had to say, and they stole your car.
Yeah, they took the property. I'm looking more to start to pull a lot of this remedy and these explanations out of the public realm, and then just interact with people more on the private side, right? And I'm not charging for that or anything. It's just my understanding, and where I'm coming to is, I don't want to be out in the open with necessarily wins, especially, right, in quotes, because I don't want folks to get an idea that I'm bragging or boasting or gloating about any of this. All I want out of any of this is, I want my rights secured and my ability to be responsible for my morality and my choice making. And that's absolutely my right. If all the slaves want to continue to give away their free will and be regulated and owned, I'm not an overthrower of that system, right? And they just put me in a Vice documentary, a hit piece, where they're claiming we're a bunch of folks who are part of a decade of hate, and we're trying to overthrow the government. So when I get on these things now, I'm going to make it very clear, just for the record, in case anybody has any crazy ideas, because it's been known to happen. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm not overthrowing. I'm not impeding anybody. All I'm doing is securing and upholding my responsibility, my ability to respond to life on life's terms, using the conscience that the Most High gave me, right? So, with that said, yes, a lot of these folks will continue to probably try to take the property. With what I have going on now, I don't think it may not be the case, right? But we're going to have to see going forward. Like I said, I have a remedy that I have created. It's recorded a certain way. Now I have a certain plate that I can display. It's in a sense recorded with these systems, but it's not within the system, because I've not contracted my rights out. So now they can't say they don't know who I am and that the plate is fictitious and all this, but they also can't say that I have license, registration, insurance, and plates, because I don't need that. And folks need to look in these codes, right? These codes are not the original public laws. They're a codified version of the original public laws. But even in the codes, it says proof of personal liability. So you don't need insurance, right? That's just one little piece, because people keep bringing up, well, Paul, what happens if you're moving down the road and you cause loss, injury, or harm to somebody? Cool, great point. Like I said, it's a personal liability bond, just like they generate in the courts. Anything they can do, we can do, and probably better if we understood who and what we are in the system. So that personal liability is $5 million. It's a bond. And if anything were to happen, these folks would be compensated just using our signature, because we are creditors. We don't have to operate from the debtor side.
So when they take your car, how do you go about getting it back from them?
I just start presenting them with the paperwork and the understanding, and get them on record, record. A lot of these interactions, I either choose not to record, or I record and don't release, because, in a way, I'm having to deal with them. And, there's, I don't want to compromise my principles and values, but I also don't want to have everything out in the open for everybody all the time. Right. So I go in there and I just start dealing with them like any other man and woman. Listen, maybe there's a misunderstanding here, but let me just let you know, what's your name? Mike, John, Jim. Let me just let you know who and what I am and what I have going on here, right? Trust property is being held unlawfully. Violation Title 15. I believe it's Title 15 or Title 18, Section 1 and 2. It's federal laws, and a lot of them might say we don't even care about federal laws. I've had public servants tell me outright, that They're operating in a commercial capacity, doing public service, part of a business. A police department is part of a business. A state of is a business. Go look it up. The state of, give me a state of New York has its own Dun and Bradstreet number. Has its own principal. It's a corporation. It's a business. None of these people are actual United States government representatives and entities. They're not members of the executive branch. They're actually, in a sense, portraying themselves falsely to be agents of the United States, which is another violation of federal code. The problem is that men and women are not dragging these folks in there on federal charges and holding them accountable. That's what checks and balances were for, right? So every time they take and move property around, they're supposed to pay taxes on that. Do you think that these corporations are paying transfer taxes to the IRS? We don't have to pay taxes. They do, because they're persons and corporations. They're taxpayers by definition. So that's another form of remedy. When men and women start doing assessments and audits on these corporations, these public service corporations, and bringing it to certain agencies' attention that they're not fulfilling their obligations, guess what's going to happen? They're going to come in and get audited, and they're going to get shut down, and they're going to stop playing with men and women and forcing securities and obligations on the side of the road, right, out of contract. So, yeah, I just go in there and start making them aware of everything that I'm aware of, and they know damn right. They know damn well that I'm right, and again, it's subjective like anything else. Some folks might say, we got a sovereign citizen in here. He's ranting and rambling. He thinks he knows something, and then you have other folks who they start shaking and they start running to their superiors. They go, this guy's bringing up a whole lot of understandings and information that we may or may not know. And one way or the other, it doesn't sound good. Is my $2,000 used car and you force an obligation, securities, and contracts on the side of the road, which is another violation of U.S. code, you think that's all worth it? So my message to them today and going forward will be, you better just stop playing with this one. And it's not about ego, because, like Bradley Sparger said to me, one of the Colorado State Police, it never ends well for you folks, he said to me, right? Now I'm going to contend that's going to go back the other way, right? I don't have to do harm to anybody. I'm a loving, peaceful man, and I'm not in controversy. But if you keep playing with me, I'm going to bring things to the light that maybe folks may not want brought to the light, right? The corrupt municipalities and what they're up to, because it's very simple. You want to shear the sheep, go ahead and do it. But when you get a man before you who presents the law, you need to honor that. You swore to God, right? I know that doesn't mean much to a lot of folks in today's society, in quotes, society. But you swore to God to uphold the law. So when you have one like me who comes before you, who can see and feel and hear and presents the law, you need to go your separate ways.
So do they just, once you present this information, do they just give your property back, or do you have to pay the towing and storage, and like how does that work?
Okay, so I'm just going to come completely out with it, because again, I'm not ashamed absolutely of anything that I do. And again, I'm not boasting or gloating, but here's the bottom line. These are all service corporations. They're providing a service. Their claim is, and again, we don't understand this, that we need to pull into private property, number one, which I failed to do. When you're in public and quote unquote public or on public property, and you leave your stuff, even if you get out of the car for 5 seconds, they're going to claim abandonment and that it's on public property and needs to be moved. So that was my mistake, is leaving that property on public property. Right now, again, it's all ridiculous because these are trustees and we're the beneficiaries. So anything owned by the public is there for my usage and enjoyment. And as long as my vessel is not impeding the forward movement or causing a safety issue, which it wasn't, it should not be moved or touched. As a matter of fact, once it is moved or touched, that's another crime. But let's not bore anybody with the details. So the bottom line was, they tried to force a service on me, the towing company. The police department got their cash because they demanded $150 cash. They're a little bit harder to deal with because they believe they're above the law. So they got their $150, and the towing company tried to hit me with close to an $800 bill. Now, I just charged it on my debit card. I signed NA, non-assumpsit. I don't assume any liability. They tried to make me sign 3 different times, 3 different ways, because they wouldn't accept it. We finally made a deal that I'm going to sign this way, and that's how it's going to be. So after signing NA, I called the bank immediately and had the charges reversed. Because like I told the bank, they forced a service on me that I did not require, and I don't care if another corporation ordered it. If they have a contract with Prescott Valley Police Department, guess who needs to pay the bill? You're not going to stick me with it because like I said, I didn't require that service, and you forced the service on me, and then you extorted me because you said do this or else, pay this or else, right? You don't have a right or an ability to do that because you believe you have a gun to my head. That's not how that works in a common law voluntary society of commerce, contracts, and commercial intercourse and interaction. So, as we move forward and as we stand in our power, we understand that nobody ever has a right or an ability to force any product or service on us. And if they think they're going to do so, that we always have some type of remedy. If not, to discharge the debt, to get compensation as well, right? Because again, they did hold the property for 20 days. So, I had a loss caused to me there. Now, due to the fact that I did get donations and I essentially made money off them taking my property, I'm not as annoyed as I would be normally. But again, it's about principle. They took property and held property for 20 days that they weren't supposed to hold. And they still got their $150 in cash. So that's 150 more than they should have. They should have paid me for taking property, holding it, and causing me loss. But again, we have to see and be thankful and grateful for the small quote unquote wins. And this is not about wins and losses. This is just about, uh, um, being humble and thankful and grateful that it could always go a lot worse. And that when we stand on the truth and apply ourselves, generally we get favorable outcome, because this whole system operates on everybody just shutting up, putting their head down, paying the fee, and not trying to get redress or remedy. So the more you run your mouth, the more you put cameras in everybody's face, the more you hold everybody response able and account able, the more that this dynamic is going to change.
Does it make you nervous at all to drive or to travel from place to place in your own personal vehicle, knowing that at any time you can come across one of these people that are going to take it? You're going to have to go through this hassle again.
Okay, so I'll quote the Tao, right? What is it, 4 or 5 thousand years old? All men and women tremble before violence, right? So every man and woman has a certain amount of trepidation within their flesh, right? Their body has a protective mechanism to make you aware. So I thank you for that, and I move forward into it because yes, while I do feel these things, I understand that, and again, this is not an egoic statement. It's a definitive statement. It's based on purpose, meaning, and definition. A brave man feels fear and continues to do what he knows is true and right. A coward feels fear and abandons the notion of right. So I don't want to be defined, right, by universe, purpose, meaning, and definition as a coward. I also don't need the credit of bravery. I just take that again as a spiritual and lifestyles principle. That of course we're all going to feel fear. Does that mean what's true and what's right changes? Absolutely not. If I know what's true and what's right and I'm made to feel fear for doing it, I probably need to do it 10 times harder because it's probably a spiritual and soul test, right? That's what Shaitan, the deceiver of the world, as an archetype. It might be an element of self, but that's what ego or Shaitan, whatever you want to call it, that's what it does. Is it uses fears to get us to sell our soul and forsake continuing to do what's true and what's right, and therefore we have to stand and be counted as that being on that side, right? The dark side of the empire, right? I work with the force, and again, I'm just giving you, the Hollywood sort of understanding of the archetypal metaphysical walk and journey. Luke Skywalker was fathered by the dark side, Darth Vader, right? I've seen my share of darkness and suffering in my life. I've crashed and burned like the phoenix in order to rise higher. So I've also taken the red pill and I can't go back. You see, I can line them all up for you and show you how they give us the game over and over again. But I understand now who and what I am and my purpose and my quote unquote hero's journey. So do I feel a bit of fear? Yes. As I continue to do this more and more and stand on my truth, the fear dissipates more and more, just like anything else. You fall off a horse, you got to get right back on and keep riding. If not, then you're going to shut down with that neurochemistry. So I just keep getting back on the horse. I keep moving my property. And each time the interaction is a challenge to me, right? So I also look at it as a level up because every time that I feel fear and move past it, it allows a certain level of development for me. It allows an inner strength and inner peace to come about. I'm no longer ruled by things from outside of me, right? And that's the true battle and self mastery walk that I think we're all on, right? The true battle, the true conquering that needs to be done is the conquering of oneself and one's own thoughts and emotions to continue to do what's true and what's right and not be swayed by the world and its stimuli. Its attempts to try to corrupt you using that fear of, oh, what will happen to my body? What's going to happen to your soul and spirit in the future of this country and this world and the young ones who they're coming for now? Let's keep it really real. So we need to get out of this self-centered modality and get back to centered in self.
I like you, Paul. I think you got a good head on your shoulder. You're doing good work. Are you? When's the first time that you came across them? Taking your property that you were just trying to move from one place to another. Like, how long ago was that the first time?
Well, I've had little issues right at the complex that I was at. They took the property. One time they put markings on the property, threatened to steal it. I called them up. They backed off. I even went so far as to tell them, you're going to come over and clean that property off because you had no right to touch it. It's just this brazen, arrogant, egotistical attitude that once these folks put on a costume, they have more rights and abilities than the men and women they serve. And it's our fault, right? I've talked with these folks on both sides. And I know they're sick and tired of a bunch of citizen taxpayer slaves complaining every day, like the sheriff who showed up. We got another complainer here. When men and women learn how to reconcile with themselves and their fellow man and woman, we won't have these problems in these corporate settings anymore with these corporate service providers at our jobs and everywhere else. We all need to learn how to be true and authentic to self and how to reconcile, based on what's true and what's right. It's an ethic. And that's why we're seeing so much destruction and deception and disempowerment in the world these days, because we've lost sight of this inherent objective morals, logic, and ethic principle, And I don't even remember what you asked me because I'm on a roll today.
All good. I was just asking how long was the first time that you had them unlawfully or take your property.
Yeah, I mean it's all kind of blurs together into one moment in a way because I don't even really focus on it. But I guess coming out, leaving Colorado, they definitely just stopped me, took me out. So I would say, after about maybe a year and a half, it was the first time at the taking me out of the car, and it's happened a few times.
So
But again, I mean, I just want to be clear, Jesse. Like the way that I look at it, and this is not me trying to be, trying to put a positive quote unquote spin on it. I, in a way, thank all these folks for what they do because I wouldn't be and continue to be growing into who and what I am and who I'm going to be if I didn't continually have these sets of challenges.
the adversity.
Right. So yeah, I'm not in a state of victimhood. I understand why they do what they do. They have no understanding, right? These are folks who, like the scripture says, condemn them not because they know not what they do. These are folks who, if they knew better, they would do better because they are actually destroying their country and their world and their future and their children's future as well. So anybody who would be conscious of cause and effect and how this all works would stop doing that. So I don't really take it personal. Again, if they knew better, they do better. And since they don't know better, I can't necessarily fault them. And even if they choose willful ignorance, it's not going to matter because we're all going to have to live in the same world they've helped to create. And we're also going to have to live in a world that I've helped create. So when it's time again to stand and be counted, it's not about ego and right and wrong as far as being right or wrong. It's about doing right versus doing wrong, right? So everyone's going to have to live with that. You're bound to live out the consequences of your actions and inactions. I don't have to live your life for you. And believe it or not, I can touch levels of love, compassion, faith, and trust in a cell that you can't even touch out here with everything, right? Because I've given up everything, I've been given access to everything. You will never have access to that living from the perspective and the state of consciousness that you continue to live in and feed. So again, don't feel bad for me. Feel bad for all the folks who continue to choose their own destruction, disempowerment, demoralization, and yeah, I mean, I can't really see it any other way. That's the real, separate from my emotions and feelings.
Have you had to spend much time in a cell?
I mean, I've done 100 days. I've done 3 days, here and there, a few hours. It's all, this thing is all one moment. And when we separate from time, we've all come here over and over again, as in a sense of, I believe that, consciousness awareness is one thing. You have your vessel, it looks different and separate from mine, and space seems to be between us, but who and what we are as an essential being is same, right? It's one love, it's one self. These are metaphysical, archetypal, ancient wisdoms and understandings that pervade all cultures and society. So, for me, I just see it as part of the walk. You incarnate here, you do these certain things, just like the Christed being, you're definitely up for being crucified, and I can't even whine or complain. If I spent 5, 10, 15 years in a dungeon or a cell, where this is all going is complete slavery and genocide. So what's the difference? You know? People
You're
had to die, man. People who came before us had to fight and die by the time they were in their 20s. And I got 50 and 60-year-old men telling me they're not really sure if they want to stand for rights and freedoms because, and then they give you the list of cop outs and excuses. Again, you'll have to live in this world, and just hoping to die before it happens is a pathetic way to live.
100%. Are they modern day pirates then that are coming to try to take your property, to try to give you tickets? Like, is this like what it'd be what pirates would be like?
I would say that you can't broad brush any group completely, but what I will say is anybody who is an order follower, I like more of the metaphor of Mr. Smith, right? Like we all have the ability to be Neo in the Matrix, a conscious being who understands self, who's active in the co-creation of his world and his destiny. And then you have the agent consciousness, the order follower, who either has no conscience and ability to think for himself, or has given that up and given that over for a check. So do I believe all the beings? Absolutely not. In that group are like that. I mean, you saw the interaction with me and Ricky Valdez on the side of the road. He's a beautiful man, so to speak, right? He has beauty within him, like we all do. The question is, can you get to that? Can you access that? A lot of folks have built up such a layer of ego that you can't access that beautifulness inside of them. They've cut off their soul because they believe they have to follow orders to get that check. That is in the scripture, the worship of Mammon. It's death worship. It's Molech. It's Mammon. It's Baal. It's the same concept and archetype over and over again. Selling the soul, selling the conscience out for a check and for worldly gifts. What does it profit a man to gain the world but lose his soul? Will you ever truly be loved by yourself, your women and children? Will you ever truly be self-respected? Will you be respected by your women and children, your fellow countrymen? No, you will not. So this is not about me. This is about, again, a self journey. This is you versus you. This is me versus me.
You quote scripture quite a bit. What's your teachings? How did you learn about that, and how does scripture go in with what you do every your daily life?
Because what it really comes down to is these are all stories that are passed on throughout the ages that resonate with a part of us. Because again, consciousness and awareness is consciousness and awareness. It doesn't matter what time or what form or what color that form is and where you take it on the map, right? A man or woman is a man and woman, and then ego arises. And we start remaking the world around us, right? What is the archetype of a Shaitan, a Satan, a Lucifer? Is remaking the creation into what it believes it should be. And you zoom in on any culture throughout the ages, and they have a certain amount of truth and they have a certain amount of culture, right? The root word is cult, where the ego, it's usually male dominator ego types, have established a hierarchy using violence, and you have to accept their paradigm, their worldview, or else you are judged and labeled. So, yes, these stories, no matter where we get them from, no matter what time, they all kind of have these certain one truths, these set of one truths that kind of come together to me to form an understanding of who and what we are, and the similarities, right, rather than the differences. So I don't really ever identify with any one particular religion. And then again, that's an interesting word. The word religare means to reunite with source or to tie the hands and bind. So the majority of religions have some truth within them to help you reunite with source consciousness. And the majority of them also have a culture of binding the hands, right? Tying you up and making you disempowered. And that's again the nature of hierarchy, male dominator, groupthink, hierarchy. And we see it nowadays as well. Women, the supposed feminine aspect of the force who are supposed to be rooted in care rather than the physical. And they're wanting to be like these quote unquote men that they see. I see more and more of that phenomena coming up. This need for worldly comforts and pleasures and power and control, rather than this need to protect what's true and what's real and what's beautiful and what's innocent, right? Like the children. But then again, with that said, I'm also seeing a new generation or a new, formation of consciousness within the women, where a lot of these women are standing up more than the men around them, right? Saying enough is enough. We're going to do more. We're going to form groups. We're going to stop this stuff. So we need to start coming together on all levels. We need to understand self, right? That's the main principle that I would say. Forget about all the religions, because the only thing about each religion that makes it great or that resonates is that knowledge of self, right? So knowledge of self, therefore, is knowledge of the universe. The more we know about who and what we are, where we come from, where we're going, we study history so we don't repeat it. Now we can co-create a world that we want to live in, right? That is the reunification of source. And no, I'm not starting my own religion. So for all the folks out there who want to set me up and get me corrected, that's not the goal here, right? I'm not the master. I'm not the guru. This is an understanding that we can all come to. I believe and feel, right? This is my experience. If we would again seek the truth and therefore be set free from our bondage. And make no mistake, ego and different forms of vice, which we all deal with, are forms of bondage, right? Ironically, like in court, they get you to sign yourself away and be bonded. Oh, he's out on bond. Yeah, that's what they do to slaves. They get you bonded to that code, to that summoning like a demon, and then control you and bind you to their sorcery and their code and their spelling, their spells. So, again, another aspect of knowledge of self, right? You got to know who and what you are and know what you're not if you don't want to be a slave. And that gets back to my moniker I've taken on, right? The unslaved.
So, have you studied the Quran at all? Because I hear you
Sure.
say shaitan, and the only time I've ever heard that was from Muslims. They would say it as shaitan instead of Satan.
Sure. And again, I mean, you could go to the Rastafari, you could go to the true devout Muslims, you could go to the true devout Jews, so to speak. And again, a lot of these words and terms I don't even like, and I think a lot of them don't necessarily like, because at the core of all this is an understanding and a teaching of who and what we are and what our place is in this universe. We are not the creators of the law. We are not the remakers of this land and everything on it and in it. We are to comport ourselves with a force that works with us and through us. And if we are deceived by group consciousness, by toxic egoic consciousness, by worldly pleasures and worldly vices and bondage, then we will be creating a living hell for ourselves, right? So, yes, Shaitan, Satan, Lucifer, to me, it's all the idea. Now, again, evil just means to live backwards, and any force here is part of cause and effect. So the dark ones here have a form and function. To me, they're basically commissioned by the Most High. They're part of the creation to bring about, right? Like Bane in the Dark Knight movie. I am necessary evil. Do you feel in charge? Right? That force is supposed to be here to show us, right? Through real fear, not that false evidence appearing real, but through true fear. If I don't do what's true and what's right, look what we're going to create and bring about. That's the quote unquote fear of God, rather than the fear of man and the world and what will be done. So to me, again, if a person is truly practicing the spiritual walk of seeking truth and knowing the self and the self's place in the universe, separate from that dogmatic teaching and hierarchy, then they will come to the same understandings, right? You could drop me anywhere in the world, and someone somewhere in the village will speak the same language as me, because we're not speaking our own language and our own slang. We're speaking the language of the universe, consciousness and awareness, and how it all relates. But the kingdom of heaven is few. It does say that, right? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Very few people can look and see. Very few people can listen and hear with the heart, get the sense of it, and then put it all together and communicate it back out, right? Testify, create the testimony. in order to inspire in spirit, right? Activate those spirits of all the other beings out there so we can light those candles, so we can remove the darkness if we find it to be undesirable and not pleasurable, right? We have choice. That's all it amounts to. We have choice to create within two dynamics of the same force, the light side of the force and the dark side of the force. And out of that, we will get results and consequences. And then we will learn from that.
What is God to you?
Essentially, there's different ways we can look at this, but if we want to talk about God in the sense of the all, I would guess the creator of, like what the Tao says, the 10,000 things. So whoever, whatever the creator of all this is, presuming that you can testify firsthand that you have a belief that there even is a creator here, because a lot of folks can't seem to see order in what seems to be chaos, right? So I am a believer that this is a creation, a simulation of sorts, and that, yeah, whoever, whatever created this simulation, this set of circumstances of cause and effect and universal law, and then allowed us all to experience it separately but together. That would be what men and women, I would say, would call God. And everybody has a view and a belief about who and what it is, but the reality of it is, I'll go back to the Tao again. The Tao that can be told, the Tao that can be named, is not the eternal Tao, is not the eternal name. So what they're saying in that is, if you can point to it and you can tell me that's God and name it and give all these attributes to it, it's a creation of your own mind and your ego and your cult. Because the true God cannot be named, right? It's a formless, nameless. It's meant to be that way. No one is meant to know it, right? And the Tao will also say, you cannot know it, but you can be it, right? It's a fascinating perspective.
Do you think that we are all here as pieces or an extension of God living in that experience, creating this whole what God is as a being?
Well, they'll give you the whole, if God is love and love is light, and atoms, even from the scientific community, they'll love me for that. Trust the science, hashtag, right? Atoms are particles of light. So if God is love and love is light, and we are particles of light, then we must be love and therefore extensions of God. And, not necessarily the creator of the all in this realm or this dimension, but yes, we have the ability to invoke, to work with, to embody the most high consciousness as a light being. We also have the ability, I would guess, and what I see, to create darkness, right? We are essentially the conduit. We talk about energy words, currency, the electricity that makes our heart run and pump through us, being grounded, right? Connecting like an electrical wire, being grounded to the planet. So we are essentially, if you go back to the alchemy, the magicians, we're the conduit, and we harness that energy. We're part of that circuitry of energy that flows, and then we can co-create and direct that, similar to what I would suspect the Most High is involved in, right? Creating the sky and the ionosphere and the electrical forces that ground us all and connect us all in the appearance of separateness and division.
So you mentioned this is assimilation. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it would just seem to me that what I see, in the words and terms and in the history, we have a cyclical, like the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, indicative of the reptilian complex, the lowest form of our brain consciousness. That's what they call it, the reptilian complex. So, rather than in this higher level neocortical thought, Neo in the Matrix, we have that idea again. Higher level thought leads to one outcome. Lower level reptilian complex based thought, go look it up, it's a part of the brain, it's called the reptilian complex. I love that whole subject. To me, it would just seem that these signs, these symbols, these words and terms, I always point out the idea of revolution. Every society is created and destroyed through what we call a revolution. Revolution is a complete circle, to revolve. So for thousands of years, folks have been coming here, incarnating, having the same exact experience, and there's only been one way out of it. And we continue to choose the same other ways, right? And it never works. It always fails. So to me, that would be a form of simulation. It's a proving ground. It's an arena. We come here, we incarnate, we're going to feel a whole bunch of things. There's going to be a lot of challenges. deceptions, unanswered questions, but we are essentially tasked to do the impossible. And again, what does the Matrix show us? Guy plugs in, he wakes up. What is reality? Oh, it's chemicals in the brain. Now, if you've taken any kind of drugs or hallucinogens, you could change the whole view of the room around you. So that's indicative of the idea that we are on some level creating our own reality. And then we look into that on multiple levels. How much are we creating our own reality? How much are we experiencing it or becoming the experience? And then the nature of consciousness and awareness starts to emerge and show itself. The nature of incarnation and how we need to take on a body to learn who and what we are beyond the body starts to emerge and show itself. Right? It seems to be a sort of a soul progression, a soul learning ground, soul test. If not, I maybe let's just say it's not that, like, right, because I'm not claiming that I know absolutely what it is. But I've written that story in my mind, in my head, and I've connected all the pieces and the dots to go with that story, and it worked for me. Because what else would you call it when an energy takes on a physical experience and has a set standard of law? No matter how many years and how many places you go to, there's one way of beingness that's going to work for self and all other versions of self. Everything else is folly and deception, and shows itself to be that in the revolution, the complete cycling, cyclical nature of creation and destruction out of fear and darkness rather than care and love. If, again, two base emotions, love and fear, right? Where are we creating from? That's what we come to the simulation, I believe, to learn about a lot of times. Are we creating from that fear space, or are we creating from that care and that love space?
Are we manifestors and creators here of this reality?
On a certain level, absolutely. We are not creators of the all, right? Someone said to me, well, you are the God of the universe. If I was, then I could make you another universe and another earth within it. I can't do such. So I am not the creator of the all. I'm not the creator of everything in it, but I am a co-creator with the all and everything in it, right?
So
By virtue of the fact that, I didn't mean to cut you off, by virtue of the fact that my thoughts and emotions and my actions create reality, even if it's 1/7 billionth of a percent, that is, an axiomatic understanding. That is a truth, right? Change yourself, you change the world, even if it's a small percentage. If enough people do that, that reality will come forth and come about. And it's not only will not and cannot be ignored, but it will create a whole new domain of knowing, of thoughts, emotions, and actions for every other version of self out there. If that ain't creating and co-creating and manifesting reality, I don't know what is. And again, it all starts with inspiration. In spirit is the root word, in spirito.
Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, I'll go back with a Rumi quote. The crack is where the light enters. Extreme darkness and self-created suffering, a lot of it, right? Part of it was what I felt was done to me, which I now understand was done for me. But at one time, extreme victim mentality, extreme disempowerment, hating myself, waking up every day, putting needles in my arms, taking pills, trying to numb the pain in my sensibilities and my intuitions. After you've done enough of that and you've overdosed a couple times and come back and done the same drugs over again, and really given a hard look at who and what you are and faced your death, you start to turn a corner at a certain point. Something happens. You have a series of events, maybe one big event, and you turn a corner and something happens where you say, no longer will I co-create my own darkness, my own suffering, my own destruction here, but I will create a way out, not only for myself, but every other light being who wishes to be a part of that.
Are you happy?
Happiness is an experience. It's a feeling. Ultimately, I think we need to focus more on fulfillment. Are we acting from purpose and meaning? Can we sit back, separate from the outcome, and say we did what we knew was true and what's right? I've seen a lot of people who tell me that they're happy. They look happy. Maybe they feel happiness from time to time, but are they fulfilled? Are they grounded? Are they centered? Are they thankful? Are they grateful? Do they wake up every day with a sense of purpose and meaning? Are they achieving in their life something that is beyond themselves? Are they serving a power higher than themselves? Or are they serving self and their little group around them? That is an unfulfilling, empty, shallow life based in materialism. If you live that life, you will never touch what I call true happiness, if you want to use that term. Again, I don't necessarily like that term, but you want to talk about true love, true happiness, that's the only way you're ever going to touch it, is to live from a space beyond this flesh, beyond yourself. right? That's when you can access true authenticity, true range of full emotions, true connectivity with other beings around you who we've been taught are divided and separate from us.
With their whole divide and conquer agenda, what's your thoughts on only you can separate yourself from yourself?
Okay, so I guess if we were to look at that idea, um, understanding a self leads one to feeling connected to all other versions of self out there, even selves that are doing harm to that version of self, right? Like a Christed being in the scripture understood that all those beings would eventually crucify him, and he understood why. He was okay with being in that camp because he understood, like the Tao says, you tell a Tao, excuse me, you tell a fool about the Tao, he laughs in your face and goes about his busyness, right? The word is business, but I pronounce it busyness. You tell a wise man of the Tao, he immediately starts embodying the Tao. So the question becomes, how do you want to be defined? How do you want to be judged, so to speak, in the world? Did you create words and terms, definitions, meaning, and purpose that describe an inherent reality? No, none of us did. So we're all on the same fair level and playing field, right? So I kind of lost sight of what you had asked me. If you want to run it by me again, maybe I'll refocus.
I just was saying if you were happy, so. Oh no no no!
Oh,
So
okay.
no. So
Yeah, we
this one
moved on
was
from that.
yeah no. So this one was the one that I said is what I say because we're all connected here as one. So really, they want to divide us from each other. So really, only you can divide yourself from yourself.
Absolutely. It's a conceptualization, right? If you hold the belief about yourself and the world that is not only inaccurate, but it is destructive, then you will immediately create the appearance and the feeling of separation, division, and disempowerment. If you hold a belief and an understanding that is not only true, but serves self and all other versions of self, and again, we can observe a lot of this on the quantum physics level. I'm not by any means an expert in any of these sciences, these understandings. I've taken enough information from them and created an amalgamation where I've put it all together and mapped out the reality in the world, right? So quantum physics shows us that the appearance of separation is just that, it's an illusion and an appearance. All things are connected, even to the level of magnetics and thought and energy, right? The same way I will, call people's attention to the animals. The ducks don't have to look left and right and tell each other how to fly. They effortlessly fly where they're supposed to fly gracefully, not touching each other, not hitting each other, like one force, one being. They're magnetically, right, in this sort of like a cloud. They talk about the cloud, the electrical phone component. But what we have there, right, is that essentially is the co-creation or the corruption of the original. The original cloud is the ionosphere. It's an electrical force of data and information that is being stored in what they call the Akashic record, and it moves, right? It delivers information across what seems to be boundaries and divisions in space. We've observed this. How does an animal or a group of animals know to leave the area before an earthquake happens? Because there's a connectivity there in the ionosphere, right? There seems to be division, space separation, but there's a direct incoming and outgoing data signal. The same way they created the black box of Shaitan, which we can use, right? Much like Neo flying into Zion and using the mainframe or creating from the mainframe to destroy the conceptualization, the veil of the matrix. Um, we can use these tools, but it's important to understand that again, there is the all, and then there's the 10,000 things. The all creates, and then everything within there is a replication, an emulation, or a corruption of the original.
So are we supposed to be, connected like that and feeling that rhythm? If there was an earthquake, we should be able to know these things. Have we lost a lot of our senses of, possible, telepathy and all kinds of connecting to our earth and our mother nature? Is that something that, we've lost our way?
Well, that's part of common sense, right, Jesse? Everyone will gladly, in a tongue-in-cheek, sort of joking way, say, "Well, common sense is not common." Yeah, part of common sense is the inherent understanding of the land and the layout and the creation, and not even having to focus on it, just having these things sort of come to you, right? This whole idea of eureka. A lot of these ideas great inventors, um, folks who have survived even just from the lowest level on the plains with the land, they will tell you that they've something happens. So there's an experience where you're just brought the information. I've had experiences like this. Ask a pregnant mother about her experiences. I've had some of them where I had an impulse one time, a bizarre thought that it occurred to me to go out and eat the dirt, right? To go smell the dirt and to go eat it. Now that sounds crazy and bizarre until you find out in certain cultures, pregnant mothers do just that. Why? Because there's minerals and elements in that dirt that you're not getting. So the conscious mind, the cultured mind says, ew, that's gross and dirty. The instinctual, supernatural part of self, the supernatural says, go out and eat that dirt. I don't care what you think about it because there's minerals and elements in there that you're deficient in and you need it. So that's an example to me. I was sort of blown away when I saw that not only was that not a bizarre idea, but there's a reason behind that. And pregnant women in certain cultures actually go and do just that. And again, we're back to the archetypal living on the land, original man and woman when you're cooking fires, you're burning wood. That's wood ash. There's potassium in there. There's all types of minerals and elements in those rocks and in that ash. The wind kicks up, it blows a little bit in your food. That's called the original supplement, right? But to us, that's dirty and gross.
Well, the average person, they say, eats 4 pounds of dirt a year. This was something that I learned, growing up just from breathing. And, I think that's part of getting the minerals in, through whatever the air and stuff. And I think the body needs these minerals. So you're onto something there.
It's part of who and what we are inherently. And when we start to get to take out, right, a lot of our learning is unlearning. We need to take away all the impediments, the blockages in self and in our world from us experiencing the supernatural connection with the universe. And it will guide us, it will inspire us, it will guide us, it will direct us. It will also co-create connections, networks, opportunities, and experiences, right? If we would walk that path. That's my experience.
So Todd is asking, tell us what you think anyone could do or not do, including you right now during these times.
I don't. He'd have to specify. He'd have to give me more specificity regarding what that means. Tell us what you think anyone can do or not do, can do or not doing, including you. I'm not really too sure what he means by that.
Are
Unless you have
you
an idea, if you want to clean that up and kind of, give me what you're
just
thinking regarding that.
Well, I think he's asking what people should be doing. Like, is there any advice you can have for people what they should be doing right now to get more balanced and centered away from this, satanic, sex cult system that, we seem to be, that's all around us.
Sure, look deeply into yourself. Start to look at who and what you are. Take account, right? Become account able of who and what you are, the life that you've created, how you've gotten where you are, and ask yourself, are you fulfilled? Just like we've been talking through this whole conversation. I don't know if I'm revealing, but I'm pointing to, right? All words, as the Tao says, are fingers pointing to the moon. I'm pointing to this whole overarching lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, right? It's a style of living where you wake up every day, you're not sure what's going to come at you, but you know that you're going to learn something, you're going to grow, and you're going to become better if you allow it to be so. And again, there's many layers to that. You're going to have to observe your thought patterns, your emotional patterns, different habits that you have. You're going to start to regain control and discipline over your inner space, yourself, and your life. You're going to start to co-create from a space where you inspire yourself daily and invest in yourself and your creation rather than be uninspired going to someone else's creation and creating for them at a limited pay rate. You see, there's many levels and layers to this, but it all amounts to the same thing. We have to take on and step into our true power and accountability and responsibility. And another thing is, people have to get away from this idea that you're always going to have pretty things. You might have to do without. You might have to sacrifice. You may have to cut off a lot of relationships in your life and not give power, energy, attention, and resources to people, places, and things that are not only not serving you, they're not serving themselves. It's all part of a death worship cultural system where folks essentially learn to not care and think that that's their greatest strength. That's our biggest weakness, right? So, what does the Tao say? Do not live with men and women who don't care. So, that would be including yourself, because every one of us has to live with ourselves and we have to take ourselves anywhere that we go. So, start with cultivating care. Start looking at who and what you are and what you're creating in this world, or what you're being, or what you're a part of creating. And then once you've taken account of that, if you don't like what you see, which most of us I don't think will until we step into this lifestyle, go back to the drawing board and start to co-create from a space where you do feel good about who and what you are and what you're creating and what you're standing for while you're here. You know, being satanic and being uncaring and being a controller, a dominator, an egoic individual chasing money, power, respect, and worldly nonsense is not cool anymore. Might have been cool for a little bit. I was there, Goodfellas, Scarface, all that. I'm an East Coaster, New York, Italian, Irish guy. I get it. It's not cool any longer. These relationships don't work. We don't feel good about ourselves. Everybody's on alcohol and drugs, chasing meaningless sex with people they don't even really like, right? Trying to buy stuff with money that they don't have to impress people they never met and don't really care about what they think, right? Again, I could tell you in so many different ways the same thing. You either feel it and you get it, or you don't. And if you feel it and you get it and you want me to help you and work with you or give you some more on the side, I don't charge for anything I do. If you want to donate, I always accept support and donations towards what I'm doing and creating the community. But ultimately, I usually work with and help anybody if they believe that I can bring value to them in their life. I do that because, again, like an addict who shows up to speak at a rehab, he may or may not get paid. He does that to keep himself sober, right? If you want to keep something, you got to give it away.
That's beautiful, brother. Sandy's asking if you pay taxes. I'm pretty sure you're gonna say no, but
Absolutely not.
I'd like to. Is there a time when you did, and now you've wizened to up, and you're not interested in that anymore?
Yeah, my understanding of the first page of the tax code is that all taxation is voluntary, and I'm so thankful for that. So, being is that I'm a law-abiding man, of course I'm going to abide by the fact that all taxation is voluntary. So, yes, I volunteer to create a revocation of election to pay taxes. I never was a withholding agent. Go look at the paperwork. You've signed up to be a withholding agent. That means you're an agent, an agency, corporate body, person under U.S. code, and you've given up your rights for duties, obligations, and responsibilities. You contracted and agreed into something you didn't know what it was and signed your name at the bottom because you're a debtor so desperate to get that money in that check that you gave up your status and standing and rights. So, and again, I might get a little bit exorcised or a little bit passionate. I just let the dog off the leash a little bit just to, maybe inspire and get that energy running through people and make them understand that not only do I not pay taxes, but I don't have to because I have a right not to. And that's the law, right? Unless you're an agent and you're getting paid by the U.S. government or one of the local or state or federal municipalities, you're not an agent either. So while you're signing as such and purporting to be one, and then taking on the duties and obligations and responsibilities of a person or an agent is beyond me, probably because the public school system has either taught you or not taught you who and what you are and kept you completely ignorant and blind to the reality that completely takes away all your rights and regulates you and feeds a beast system that you continue to give your resources to, right? Your money is energy. It's an extension of who and what you are. If you continue to give extensions of your energy and who and what you are and what you create to feed a beast system, you will generate slavery and genocide for yourself. So again, I love that. I love that Shaitan and Lucifer has created such a beautiful, ugly system to teach everybody how not to be a slave through darkness and self-created suffering and contracts and deals with the devil. But at some point, it's time to move on,
That's a very healthy way of looking at it. So good on you, brother.
The first maxim in law is let he who wished to be deceived be deceived. These folks have never once told you that you had to pay taxes. They told you that you can't tax evade. Tax avoidance and tax evasion are two very different things. You've contracted to pay. If you won't pay, you're evading. If I don't contract, I'm avoiding. I have a right to avoid all contracts that I believe will cause me loss, injury, or harm. That's UCC, that's Constitution. That's many different forms of law, and it all makes sense. It's common sense.
What do you know about the spells in the language that they've put? You know, these sorcerers, or they seem to have put spells into different words that we speak.
I think that all words and terms are creation. It goes back to the idea of magicians and alchemy, if you want to use an archetypal paradigm so we can kind of understand it from a fantastical movie kind of point of view. But in a sense, it's absolutely true. We use words, terms, and the energy behind them to create a reality. You know, we can enchant folks. A lot of the reason why people like me or resonate with me or listen to me is because I can be enchanting at times, not because of who and what I am, but because I allow the spelling, the energy, the sorcery, and the light sense to work through me. The currency, right? The true currency is that electricity, that energy that inhabits the heart. When you speak from the heart, and what you're speaking can be demonstrably shown to be true in cause and effect, it can be enchanting. It can be like a spell. I mean, you saw on the side of the road, Ricky Valdez was almost like, he was enthralled with me and who I was, and he wanted to know more and feel more. That's true love. And I don't mean to, people will get crude and crass and, oh, this guy's, they're having a bromance and all this. True love doesn't know gender, right? It's a feeling, it's a vibe, it's an energy, and it attracts. That's why we say that being's attractive, right? So, yeah, when we get down to it, right, we're all co-creators of reality, but there are forces and there are folks here who are contracted on many levels to use words and terms and the misunderstandings of them to get us into these arenas to be tested about who and what we are and what we really want. If we want to be men and women, they're going to make men and women out of us. They're going to use words and terms and knowledge and wisdom and knowledge of self to either allow us to move forward or hold us back, right? Again, Saturn, Shaitan, it's the same idea of consciousness and beingness, the inhibitor, the one who puts you forth or the one who holds you back. It's the black robe ones, it's the Grim Reaper, right? So they have a form and function. They're here to test us. If you would just simply understand the words and terms and symbols and who and what you are and how to use all of it, they will give you passage. One way or the other, you have to be allowed safe passage because you work with the other side, right? And again, there is a covenant, there is a contract there that you can only really be as harmed in a lot of instances, right? I don't even want to necessarily claim that. While I feel that in this moment, and I sit with that faith, and I'm always shown and renewed in the idea that no matter how scared I am, I suffer more in the mind than I do in reality. I also don't want to put out that idea that, hey, there's never evil people who are going to come along and try to destroy you. But it would seem to me in a lot of these situations, your signature is required at the bottom. You're required to be summoned to appear in person. I don't want to hear about the feelings and whatever they're going to do to you behind it. Have you ever not appeared as that person and sent paperwork, which is the language that they speak, the language of the dead, is black and white words and terms on paper? Have you ever used the paperwork and the understandings and who and what you are to create remedy? If you haven't, then you can't talk to me about what's going to happen if I don't show up in court. Again, they never asked you as a man or woman to show up. They said, all caps person, corporation, we're summoning you to appear like a dead entity. If you're stupid enough to show up, like one of the court clerks said to me one day, why do you keep showing up here? I says, you know what? You're absolutely right. I've done nothing wrong and they're not asking for me anyway. So I'm just never going to come back. When you want me, you'll call for me. Ask for the uppercase, lowercase, given, family name, right? Not the Chicago Styles Manual, supposed foreign language of the all caps capitis diminutio maxima, where you tried to reduce my capacity and my standing to that of a corporation or a dead entity trying to summon me, right? That is my person. I use it to do legal business. However, I am not that person and I will not appear as that person. Why would I? The only way you can interact with me and regulate with me is if I appear as that person, because corporations can only regulate corporations. Corporations can't regulate man or woman. So, again, it's a spell, it's sorcery, it's magic, but it's only as good as the level of ignorance or misunderstanding, right? My people perish for lack of knowledge. Once you know who and what you are, it's a bunch of games to me at that point. They can come do whatever they want to me. I don't even care if they understand what it is. I know what it is and how it works.
So that dead entity is traded on the stock exchange. they've had, there's bonds, or there's money attached to these dead entities. Have you ever, thought or did any research on, some people are saying that they can actually get that, their own money that comes to their name, to whatever that dead entity is that they have?
Yeah, so there's many different ways to look at this thing, right? And one of the ways is, again, because we have a tendency to make things either completely good or completely bad. One of the original functions and ways to look at this is that all caps name is a trust, right? At some point, there was no more lawful money in existence, so we all had to do legal business with legal currency. Part of that is credit and debit. In order to do that, you have to create a personage that can be used in the electronic world. That's what that is. Go look at your debit card. It's an all caps name right under the bottom. It says name on card. It doesn't say name of the man or woman. So that's the legal personage that we use to do legal business and to discharge debt, right? So there's a trust there. There's an account, right? There's a social security number, which is linked to an account, which is linked to the all caps name. And yes, it's all held by the Treasury, and it's how we keep this whole thing going. So every time they write up a bond, every time they create charges, right? These are currency billing terms, right? They're creating an obligation or security on the side of the road. They're charging you that account, right? And then they're going to bring you in as the man to sign as surety for that legal person, that bond, and that obligation and security. Then they're going to go take that bond back to the treasurer, and they're going to cash out for however much, a couple 100,000, couple million. Because yes, every one of us, from our understanding, again, we're all kind of circling the drain nowadays on this understanding. There is an account there. There is a treasury bonds there. There is credit and wealth and energy and ETFs, EFTs, electronic funds transfers. There are credits in everybody's account that we have an ability to use to discharge debt. Because again, this stuff's all created out of nothing with nothing. It's all one big game and illusion and Ponzi scheme. Derivatives banking. It's numbers on a screen. They create this stuff all out of thin air. And just like they create, they will control and they will destroy. And we're seeing now we're going to be moved over to centralized digital banking currency, just right on time after the whole COVID situation. It's amazing how everything kind of just coincidentally occurs right on time. That cash is dirty, Jesse. Don't you touch it. There's germs on it. Good thing we're using debit cards and already using digital electronics fund transfer, because soon, coincidentally, we're going to go over to completely cashless centralized digital banking currency, and you will see the fourth industrial revolution and the biggest wealth transfer, property transfer in history. And I'll quote Mr. Schwab, you shall own nothing and you'll be happy. But there's another side to that, right? If you put all your property in trust and you understand trust law, and you start to be the user of property here, because nobody can ever really own property. And if you own property, you take on all the obligations. So property is used and maintained and upkept and held in trust, but nobody can ever really own it. So I will be owning nothing and I will be happy, but it's going to be a little bit of a different version than the average debt slave. And I say debt slave with the utmost care and concern, but I'm also not going to hold my tongue, because again, words, terms, meaning, and purpose is important to me. And make no mistake, that term slave is very apropos.
This last 2 years and 3 months, have you noticed things changing around you? Have things changed for you personally? How has this affected you since the beginning of 2020?
It allowed me, you asked me earlier, how do I get inspired? When they start to burn the house down around you, it gives you a little bit more motivation and confidence to go ahead with that forward escape. So yeah, absolutely. They started to bring the house down around us, and it became absolutely clear that all the suspicions, the intuitions, the information that I had was all not only true and correct, but it was going to happen a lot quicker and a lot more swiftly than I had ever imagined. So yes, I'm a decade into this. I was telling family and friends, and if you go back again, you could do the research. Go back on my Facebook 10 years ago. Everything's out there. I was talking the same stuff then as I am now. So once this whole thing hit, absolutely, I said, you know what? If there's ever going to be a time to rebuke this evil. Evil is spelled EVIL. It just means live backwards. If we're ever going to stop living backwards and feeding this beast system, now's going to be the time. I'm going to rebuke it completely. I'm going to repent from my wicked ways, and I'm going to turn toward the light, right? And I'm going to embody a godly, righteous, and again, godly is in quotes. I don't even like the term, but a godly, righteous, ethical, moral lifestyle. And I'm not going to care. I'm going to surrender what men and women have for me in this realm, right? On many different levels. So, yes, COVID, quote unquote, was a very empowering time. And again, everything is what you make it. Many folks lost their mind, their heart, their property, their vision, their purpose during COVID, which means that's what they needed because it must have been based in some kind of a false principle or false premise. Folks who were seeking truth found meaning, purpose, empowerment during this, right? Though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil in living backward because we know who and what we are. And we know what walks with us and works with us. You know, we feel it in our beingness.
Wiggy was asking earlier if you got a Facebook page, and I just wanted to mention if anybody wants to connect and you're on the Facebook, just go to my profile and see I tagged him in this in interview, so you can just click on his name to find it, easy for that. And we have a question here. Back where was it? Jennifer says, so you don't attend court? Do you turn any paperwork in or do any kind of response? Do you actually respond when you do have court, or you just not show up and, just deal with it if they come?
No, you don't ever ignore anything because everything's an offer to contract, and they'll play the game of presumption, assumption, tacit agreement, and hearsay. So I'm not going to let somebody get up and talk for me and make inferences. I'm also not going to ignore and let them work from presumption and assumption. And I'm also not going to stay silent and allow them to get tacit agreement. What I will do is make my claim, who and what I am and where I stand, my status and standing, and I will let them know that I'm outside of their jurisdiction. Jurisdiction in Latin means to speak or say the law. No man or woman in this realm, especially on a common law land, is going to speak a law for another man or woman. It's a little thing we call all men and women are created equal. The weird thing about it is a servant is not equal to man or woman. They're beneath man and woman. So a public servant in any form, I don't care if it's black dress wear, something we call a prosecutor, one who's going to put his cuticles on you. He's going to put hands on you, the prosecutor. I'm not interested in any of these titles, these agencies and their corporations and administrative courts. I'm the highest thing in that realm. And if I choose not to be summoned as that all caps name, my legal person, because they want to force charges and obligations and securities on me unlawfully, I have the right to do so. So again, it's just about creating communication and understanding contract law, and everything is offer. You give me an offer, I give you an offer. Sometimes I handle it different ways depending on how I'm feeling at that time. I don't claim to do everything right all the time by any means. There's some times where I may conditionally accept. Okay, you want me to appear? I'll show up, pay me $10 million. I'll appear as that legal person all day long, just like I'll appear as Kim Kardashian or whoever else if you give me a wig and tell me to act goofy and pay me enough. See, I'll play their game. They want to do commerce and commercial interactions, then we'll speak their language. I'll appear as that person. You give me X amount, and they're never going to take that offer. So again, you gave me an offer. You said, we summon so-and-so to appear as that person. Well, that sounds a lot like my name and looks kind of like my name, but it's not my name. That's my legal person. And I'm not too sure why you're putting charges on it, right? I'm not too sure who's going to substantiate the obligations and the securities behind these charges. Because again, I'm not a debtor. I'm not a surety for that legal person, right? I'm the creditor. I'm the secured party in this interaction. I'm the beneficiary of the trust. You're just mere trustees. You all exist to upkeep, maintain this whole world so I can come along, kick back, and enjoy the benefits. That's the whole purpose of trust. Just like I told the guy yesterday with state land. This is state trust land. I said, great. Guess who the beneficiary of that trust is? Man and woman. Corporations and government can't own anything. They can only upkeep, maintain. And guess whose money they use to do it with? The citizen taxpayer slave who made a complaint on me. So he's not even a beneficiary. He's there to pay taxes so I can kick my feet up and enjoy that land. See, no one understands their role, their position, and they don't mind their own busyness, right? That's another thing we need to get back to. Mind your own busyness. Mind your business. If you don't understand who and what you are, or who and what I am, you have no business interacting with me. And if you do have a complaint, because they'll show up and say, so and so's got a complaint. Well, I don't answer to complaints. Complaint is synonymous with a nagging spouse. I'm not married. So you can complain all day long. Unless you have a claim, I'm uninterested. Complain to somebody who has a duty and obligation to you, which would be the trustee. So I told the sheriff, they need a daddy. Go ahead and be their daddy. When they complain, explain to them that the way that a man handles his affairs is he walks over and asks me, what am I doing on that land? Because he lives there. Bring a gun with you if you'd like, if it'll make you feel safe. We have a conversation. You learn who and what I am. I'm over there because I'm buying property. And let's be real about it. I might just make this place a little bit more enlightened. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical perspective. I'm saying it from a physical understanding of bringing light to that place, that area, and that property. So why are you making false claims on me and making complaints and projecting your darkness onto me when you don't know who and what I am and don't even understand that I have no obligation to answer to your complaints? Make a claim that I don't have a right to be on that land. Come in as a beneficiary and make the claim that you have the rights to that land, right? But again, nobody has any understanding. They have no care to understand process, procedure, words, terms, purpose, meaning, position, title, any of it. And again, that's why our lands and our people perish for lack of knowledge of self and therefore the world.
Scott wants to know, what is your status?
What is my status? Well, it depends on who you ask, but I guess in this moment right now, my status is that of a man. I seem to be a man. I have all the makings. I guess, some women might make a joke there, but I have all the makings and presentations and parts and pieces of a man to substantiate that claim. So I am before you, speaking before you as a man, but I guess that would ask a deeper question. Who or what is a man or woman truly, right? And I'll oftentimes ask people, who are you? And they'll tell me what they do. Oh, I'm a cleaner, I'm a post office person. No, who are you? Right? And then they'll continue to tell me what they do and what they have. Right. So I guess, like I told Ricky Valdez on the side of the road, who and what I am is even beyond a man. A man is the form that I take on in this realm. So my status is I am that am. I'll tell you the same way that Christ is being told them in scripture when they asked him the same question. I am that am. Any other being that can say the phrase I am that am.
I was listening to this doctor who got fired here in Canada because he prescribed some of the Ivor to some people and he saved their lives, but it was against protocol. So he's gotten fired. His name's Dr. Nagasi. And he was talking when the Freedom Convoy came up, and he was telling, he's like, if you ever go stand in front of a judge, you should ask him if he stands under God, because he can't say that he actually stand under God. And he says if he doesn't say that he doesn't stand under God, then he doesn't have the authority to be able to judge this proceedings, because a judge would actually say he stands under the queen and the crown, and he doesn't actually stand under God. So have you ever heard about this? Because I thought that was pretty fascinating that he told this in front of everybody at the convoy.
Absolutely. This is just back to a philosophical principle. I had an exchange, a colloquy, so to speak, as they will call it, a back and forth with a man in a black robe. And I said to him, well, sir, you're claiming here today to be a judge. Only God is my judge. And with what you've shown me here today, you are not only not fit to be a judge because you're not God, but you're also not fit to discern because you lack discernment, right? This was a person who was wearing a mask and told me that they got all the vaccines. So how is somebody, again, you can only really be judged or discerned or understood by your peers. So that goes back to a jury of your peers. So not only can you not really find a jury of peers, you can't find somebody to judge that case, because again, only God is the original judge, and most of these men and women lack discernment. So what exactly is it that they're going to concur and to ascertain about me and who and what I am, other than if I've done wrong or not, which should be pretty simple and substantial. Where's the man or woman on the other side? There never is any. There's an agent claiming to be the people. Who is that, right? There's nobody actually there. On paper and in the room, there's nobody actually there. So we're not there to figure out who did right from wrong. We're there to figure out who's going to pay. Well, certainly it can't be me because I'm the beneficiary. I have no duties and obligations to you or any of these corporations or societies. I'm here to reap the benefits, right? So again, we're back to guilty. How do you plead? I'm not interested in pleading. I don't plead to any other man or woman. I'm not going to beg. And furthermore, guilt means to do wrong. My understanding of the word guilt in German is to means to do wrong. So how could I ever ascertain if I've done wrong or right if there's no man or woman on the other side with a claim to tell me exactly what it is they think I did or did not do? If somebody over there claims to be the people, right, who is a person or agent or agency, well, they're already making a false claim and bearing false witness. Furthermore, they're claiming that I've done the wrong of breaking a code. I have no obligation to follow policy and code. Statute and policy is only given the force of law through the consent of the governed as per the Declaration of Independence. Someone needs to go back and study the foundation of this country and how it all works and what makes it beautiful and great. The fact that the people run the show. And just calling yourself the people, even though you're acting in the capacity of agent, agency, and person, doesn't work. It works on most slaves because they don't understand the mind trick going on, right? And because they've come in as a you, a plural. They've come in as a person, like we discussed. They've shown up, and therefore it's already presumed that, hey, we summoned this all caps being and you showed up. You must be a person, a corporate entity. So we're going to apply statute and policy to you. You work for us now, right? You have to express the opposite. No, 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 no. I'm the beneficiary. You're the trustees. You only exist because of me. Man and woman created government. Government did not create man and woman. What we create, we control. So I will control you here today. You will work for me.
Is that how we stop the maritime law from, you know, doing whatever it really wants here when people comprehend what their rights are?
Absolutely. Part of it is a numbers game, right? These people do this so often and they get away with it and there's no repercussions that, unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of power and control. Is that, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So you have a bunch of people who've been, you know, they've they've had no interference with their daily operations, and they've had nobody to bring it to anybody's attention of who and what we are and who and what they are. And that's what we're all here doing right now. Anybody who resonates with and has started to walk this walk, that's what we're all being called by the universe to do, is to resurrect the common law, not only of the universe, but of these lands. It's why my YouTube channel is favored by folks in Australia, New Zealand, Canada. All the common law lands are watching what I and others are doing because they understand we all come from the same understanding. And I'll even give it to folks in Malaysia and Dubai and everywhere else that I talk to the same way. You're a man or you're a woman. You're accountable to whoever, whatever you think God is first. That man-made law, that men or women who come up and sit down and use words and terms to create supposed law in the realm that changes week to week, that is Shaitan, right? Man's law is Shaitan. It is the deception. It is the devil. It is selling of your own soul. And the true religare, the reunification with source consciousness, right? So if we continue to choose to bind our own hands with the culture and religion of statism and government root word means to control the mind, gubernare mente, mind control, right? Now we're either going to govern our own mind, self-government as people, as men and women in common law lands, or someone else is going to step in to govern us for us if we allow it to be so. And most folks with their license, registration, insurance plates, W-9s, registrations, and all the rest. Regis is the root word for of king. Every time you register something, you've given away private property rights to your officials, right? So
We had someone that's awesome. We had someone back here say Sansi. She says, "I want to see his land. A little tour would be nice. Do you give out tours? Do you invite people to come, meet with you wherever you are?"
Well, for now, you're going to have to deal with the digital tour. You're going to have to throw on that Oculus. Back in the day, they used to say don't sit too close to the TV. Now they say go ahead and just wrap the TV around your eyeball. So you're going to have to throw that Oculus Rift on and walk around in the metaverse and tour the land for now. Number one, I'm about 3 miles away because I don't get service up where we are. So I kind of wrote down. I can't exactly get out and give it to you right now. I have done a couple quote unquote tours or shown the land on the Facebook and on the YouTube broadcasts. At some point going forward in the future, once I create a space that's debt free and secure for myself and the few folks who are involved going forward, yeah, we may start to open up uh, the situation to other people, members of the community and different networks to, trade, barter, uh, live, love, be men and women together and do all the things that we do in a functional, healthy, desirable community. So yes, that is at some point, right? But like I said, you got to put the mask on yourself before you hand it to somebody else. And no, I don't mean the COVID mask, the oxygen mask, right? If the plane's going down, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you hand it to the person next to you. So I'm pretty focused right now. Call it selfish, self preservation, call it whatever you'd like. I need to have a piece of land and something on it debt free and be out of the matrix cyclical slave debt system and be able to co create and reinvest back in myself and my broadcast and what I want to create in this world. So that's what's taken up most of my energy, time, and attention.
Do you think the New World Order is going to be successful in, you know, taking away everybody's freedom here? Because, even though you're on your own little sovereign place of land, if they do end up, kind of being rampant everywhere, they're going to come for everybody.
Well, Jesse, um, I don't really want to get too much into that space of what will happen if, but I think everybody knows good and well what happens when certain forces, don't want to leave everyone alone, right? I mean, there's two kind of people. They say folks who want to be left alone and folks who won't leave them alone. So, if I'm a good, loving, compassionate, faithful, trustworthy being and I'm doing what's true and what's right and I wish to be left alone and you won't allow me to be left alone, then I'll quote Kennedy, right? Um, those who make peaceful resolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. So, I don't think any good man or woman wants to be involved in another cycle that we call revolution, where men and women have to take each other's lives because they can't use words, terms, purpose, and meaning to communicate effectively and come to a remedy and a resolution, right? But always a possibility, and I'm prepared for those times and those days if they come about. That is one of the reasons, like I'm saying, I'm getting where I am because I don't want to be in the cities and in the towns when they cut the lights off and crash the banks like they did the last time they put everyone in masks with the Spanish flu and crashed the banking system and moved everybody over to a different currency system. As I laid out, they're going to do it again. I'm not going to be in and amongst the rabble, so to speak. And again, don't confuse when I do that, right? I can mock, I can sort of use abrasive and vitriolic language at times, but the truth is the truth. The majority of men and women have shown themselves, especially over the last couple of years, to be unable to ascertain, unwilling or unable to ascertain right from wrong and stand on it, right? So they are, in fact, liabilities rather than assets to the universal truth, which I intend to uphold and stand on. So we walk the line of caring for everybody, wanting to help others, wanting to raise up other folks whose parents never raised them up in the mind and heart to a different frequency. But the other end of that is I do have to secure my body, my standing and my status and my ability to create and sustain from a resource perspective. I can't be beholden to the Walmarts, the Kmarts, you know. Uh, um, I can't be beholden to the Joeys and the Barrys and the Donnies and everyone who watches my broadcast knows what I'm talking about there. I want out on all levels, right? And then I can truly create from a space of saying, well, I'm living this lifestyle, I'm walking the walk, I'm co-creating outside of the matrix and the beast system. You can join me, right? Then we're not in conflict, we're not in war. There'll just be this choice and that choice. And they lay it out for us, Hunger Games, right? There'll be folks who are in and amongst the complete genocide slavery system, and there'll be others kind of on the outskirts who may have to do without at times, but we'll have everything that we need. And if not, we'll be able to get it one way or the other, right? It's not an option anymore. We know who and what they are. They tell us what they're going to do. And I'm not even going to say we. I know who and what they are. They tell us what they're going to do. And I'm completely gaming up for it. Let's see what's the best that you got. Show me everything that you have in that bag of tricks. And I'm going to do everything that I need to do. And then let the best man win, so to speak. And again, I could lose this whole battle, right? Or I could lose the war, but I've won my individual battle, right? I was a heroin addict who didn't know who and what I was, didn't know if I would ever love or be loved, didn't know if I ever had a purpose or any kind of meaning or ability to create and have a career in this realm. Now, as of the last few months and next month, people are going to pay me to show up and talk and be who and what I am. So I've transcended my karma and my walk, right? I've won my battle. If we have to lose the war collectively and I have to suffer along with everybody else, I'm totally okay with that. That's part of the dynamic of incarnating in a seemingly separate and divided, but also connected world.
You're a beautiful soul, brother.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sandy wants to know, how do you survive the winter in a tent?
Well, like many of the large megafauna that populate this area, I'm about 6'3", 250 pounds, I would say. I got a pretty good layer of insulation on me. Get yourself ground cover to stay off the ground, a pad. Get yourself 3, 4 blankets, some socks, a couple layers of clothes, and you do your thing. I mean, most people, it seems, who talk about not being able to survive the winter probably never went out and tried to survive the winter. So, I mean, again, it's just another thing for me. It's not, people have been doing it for thousands of years. I mean, how did they do it? They took animal fur, wrapped it around themselves, insulated themselves, used fire. You know,
And I can attest to that. About 30 years ago, I lived in my van and all it had was a carpet floor, and it was minus 30, which is minus 32 Fahrenheit, about minus 32 Fahrenheit. And I was able to be in my van. I had lots of blankets, and it was me and my dog. And I was able to live inside the van. Maybe a little different than the tent, but still cold is cold. And, we were able to have enough blankets to keep us warm through the night. I just cuddled my dog to keep that body heat helped us keep warm.
yeah, and I think that like everything in life, a big part of it is the perspective you bring into it, right? If you come into it with a completely fearful state of being, I heard an interesting story the other day, kind of makes me think of. I got trapped in a freezer at work and, couldn't get out. And they found him dead in there, kind of long story short, I guess the way it was told, but they found him dead in there. But when they examined the freezer temperature thermometer, they found that it was broken. So he was looking at it, seeing minus whatever it was on the freezer, but in actuality, there was no cold going into the room. So what I'm getting at it here is what they could only surmise is his thoughts and beliefs about that room and that temperature actually got him to generate a reality where he killed himself thinking he was freezing to death when there was no change in the outside of the freezer and the inside, right? So uh, it was kind of an interesting way to illustrate an idea that the way you come into something and how much fear and disempowerment you have around it will greatly influence your experience of that event, right? I don't care if it's doing time in a cell, surviving through the winter, poverty, right? What folks call poverty. If you're rich in spirit, again, if you have purpose, meaning, and faith, you can deal with a lot more situations, even on a biological and chemical level. Something happens, there's a change in that being, right? It's a physiological, biological, chemical change based on the thoughts and emotions that we hold.
100%. And it's just the same as when one of those drug dealers in a white lab coat, they give somebody a death sentence and say, you're going to be dead in 12 months or you're going to be dead in 4 months. It almost always, that person dies around the time that they say, because they've predestined that person to believe they're going to die, which in turn they end up dying right around that time.
Sure, and I've seen a lot of this in my own life, and it's again just part of that disempowerment web where you allow other people to know you and control you better than you know and control yourself and your faculties. And, again, I'm not going to like make the claim there is, there's a certain level of environmental danger always present. But there's to me, an extreme importance that needs to be put on the inner space of the being who's dealing with his outer space. Like they'll say, I'm big on the cliches because they tend to be true. A lot of life is what you make it, right? Your perspective, the way you're viewing it, the thoughts. If you give some people the ability to find something negative, they'll sit there all day and find how everything's bad and negative. And you have a different type of person who they're looking for the positive. When you just see the difference in how those beings create and what's created around them and how they deal and cope with reality, it's a completely different standpoint. Find something right, find something good to focus on rather than find something wrong, something scary, something that's not going to work. A bit. It sounds silly maybe to some people, but it's a huge thing. The way that we conduct ourselves, right? We're back to energetic, electrical language. The idea of conducting ourselves and moving that energy and that perspective.
About 25 years ago, I was working for a company called Trans-Canada Pipelines. I was in the purchasing department, and my
I'm
boss
sorry to
wanted
hear that. My condolences.
I was I was just learning things, and I actually got asked to be with someone to work with her. And I'm always been a positive person. I've always been happy. I've always been optimistic. I've never really had the defeated attitude where, I think that this is shit and we're all gonna die. And I've never had that. I've always been a generally positive person. I even had a nickname called Happy Head. And I got moved to work with this lady, and she was what you were talking about, one of those negative people, and everything that she said was negative. It was too cold outside. It was too packed on the train. This sandwich has got too much mayonnaise on it. It's like every single thing that came out of her mouth seemed to be negative, right? And for me, it was like hard because I'm a positive person. She was older at the time. I think I was like 22 or 23 years old. And she's in her 35 maybe 40s or whatever, and just super negative. And I was working with her for a few weeks, and I ended up catching myself starting to be negative. Started to complain about things, and just being around that negative. So it's really important to surround yourself with the people that you want to be. If you want to be, if you want to be a happy person, surround yourself with happy people. If you want to be really depressed, then surround yourself with those depressed people, because usually people end up, being like the people that they surround themselves with. And I went to my boss and I said, I'm like, hey, I have to resign. I don't know how to do this. I was only 23 years old. I never knew about resignation. And I said, I need to resign. He's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I said, well, I'm working with this lady that you told me to work with, and I'm catching myself being as negative as her, and I don't want to be like that. He's like, you don't have to resign. He goes, I'll just move you to a different assignment. And I was able to stay at that, job for a while longer. But it's just really important to make sure that the energy that you want to be is, that where you want to be is, you want to surround yourself with the type of people or the type of things that you search, the type of things that the movies that you watch. I think it's really important you put the stuff into your body that wants to kind of resonate with you of who you want to be.
Well, that goes back to this idea of solitude, right? When we look at the root word is soul, like sun or light, and it's a combination of almost the word light and attitude. And people automatically have this connotation of it means loneliness or aloneness, but no, it's creating a space inside of yourself as well as a lot of times outside, right? Where I'm at is solitude. There's nothing but really plants and animals around me, right? And it's so that I can generate and center and ground and create a space of light, attitude inside of myself, right? So, yes, until you're able to navigate those situations, it's probably a good idea, like I said earlier, to separate yourself from people, places, and things that tend to bring that darkness and that negativity out of you. Now, with that said, I always have to go back to the principle of ignorance. Getting around these situations and circumstances where the darkness is brought out of you can be very good. and it can be a extremely positive learning tool, right? Like somebody who goes to jail or rehab that doesn't want to be there, if they go there and commit themselves to the process, it can be a dark, scary place, but you'll learn so much about yourself and how you act out, right? So learning your triggers, so to speak, right? Not a See, it's a balance. It depends where you are in your life. For like certain person at certain point in their life, they may want to exclude themselves till they can get to a centered and grounded place where they can cope and deal with those environmental stressors. So I want it to be clear. I'm never advocating for like completely shutting everyone out and going away forever. But there may be times in a being's life where they have to cut certain things off so they can get back to center and get grounded and cultivate that light attitude, that enlightenment, right? With all that dark negativity and weight. Then once you cultivate that, you can bring that into the world. And when so and so Karen gets negative, say, you know what, Karen, maybe that's not really what it is. Maybe it's this. Let me show you this perspective. Why is it that you think that? Why do you come at everything from that? What? Let's get to the root of it, right? So it's kind of situational and conditional and subjective based on, for me, what I would say the being, is healthiest or most beneficial to the being and where they're at.
Someone was
Because
asking
again,
earlier.
right, Jesse, I didn't mean to cut you up, but just imagine how powerful and inspirational and effective we could be if we don't cut these folks off, but if we get to a place of creating that enlightenment and that attitude inside of us, and then bringing that into the world and helping these people rather than cutting them off because we see them, right? I'm trying to live in both worlds. I'm trying to create that solitude and also work in the world to help folks, because I've been on both sides. I've been on the side where I couldn't see the positive. I couldn't see that the cloud had a silver lining at all. It just seemed like thunderstorms and rain for the rest of our life.
100%. I was just going to say, someone was asking earlier, they were wondering what you were smoking.
Well, you know, I guess we could say, like, it's like, what's the status? The status of this would be herbal remedies. Right? We have different herbal remedies that we tend to imbibe in from time to time. Um, I don't necessarily promote it. Um, it's one of those things, right? There's always kind of these habits. You may call them vices, coping mechanisms. Some folks call it spiritual plants, sacraments. I don't really, it could be either or, depending on how you feel about it, right? We're back to this concept of, if you can do something and not regret it, was it bad and wrong if you're being conscious of everything involved, right? So I'd have to say, if nothing else, I think reefer can be a positive thing, a medicine, a healing of the nations in a sense, but it's only a tool for self work, right? Like any other herb or plant or consciousness changing, matter. It can be a tool, to help and to grow and to change, and it can also be a painkiller and a vice at times, But we've come a long way, if we're going to justify a little bit, right? To create a right that doesn't exist in Latin, justification, but it is a right. It's not a wrong behavior, but the rap, the tobacco rap is where, for a self, like inside a self, that's where it creates a little bit of an issue, right?
Yeah, for me, I use hemp papers, so that way it's kind of the hemp. It kind of makes it similar to the cannabis, and I call it medicine. And if it's from the earth, it's medicine. Medicine is not the drugs that they are pushing, that these pills and these synthetic things. Those are drugs. That's not medicine. Medicine comes from the earth, provided by the earth to help us, to heal us, to help us with pain, to help us with our mind. To help us not go insane.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all about, a lot of ways, the being that you talk to and what they feel like is a challenge in their life or an addiction or a vice, and how they process that. Is there any feeling of, because again, every time I open that cigar wrapper, call it informed consent, call it a sorcery or a spell, it says right on the package it's going to cause XYZ. So every time I open that and wrap up that reefer with that wrap, I'm consenting to that. I'm contracting to that. And that's a bizarre sort of dynamic, right? And I see that it's a pervasive quality of humanity, right? The hue of a man, that we continue to death worship and engage in activities that not only not don't serve us, but actually take the life from us. So I think going forward, at the very least, and it's part of this whole theme, I will grow my own tobacco if I'm going to continue to smoke it, and yeah, I'll use the wraps that way. And I guess we can find out firsthand if natural tobacco causes cancer and whatever else without the pesticides and everything. Because I would suspect a lot of this stuff doesn't cause as much problems as it does because it's processed and sprayed with a bunch of chemicals.
The chemicals are what's really causing the big problem. So, are you? How do you nourish yourself? How do you eat? You know, do you growing some food right now, or do you, constantly have to go every day to get some groceries and, like to find some food? Like, how are you foraging? How are you getting nourished?
So right now, we're kind of still in the stage of transition where we go once a week to the store. Pretty much, I get fruits and vegetables. I do eat pasta and rice. So I mean, there's sort of a mixed review on that. But yeah, I mean, I don't eat any meat. I don't eat anything that was walking around. That's a whole other, uh, I guess, trail that we can go down. Where on a lot of the media that I'll put this stuff out on, they'll make these false equivalencies, folks will, about animals and plants and how we have rights to control and dominate and genocide and enslave whole races of beings simply for our palate. They're not even a lot of these folks claiming they need it to live. They're just like, well, we have a right to do it. They're under us. And I go, well, just so you know, your masters have this literally the same ideology that you have, that you're dumbed down lesser beings and they're going to cage you, enslave you, genocide you, and feed off of you. So just understand you're generating essentially one of those simulation karmic loops again. And I guess, if you're really close up on something, a lot of times you don't see it. It's like that thing, what I forget how they put it out there, but the guy's really close to the picture, so he can't see it. You got to take 3, 4, 5 steps back. You got to do without meat for a couple of years before you start to see it for what it really is. You're too close to the picture. I know because I was one. Meat tastes great. That barbecued meat, slathered up, greasy with all the sauce on it. Mm-mm. But when I take a couple years and step back from it, not eating it and not consuming it and death worshiping, I go, this is wrong. It's gross. It's bizarre behavior. You don't have a right to do it. Right. And unless you want to equate yourself with a predatory animal that doesn't have any ability to empathize or to justify, right? To understand the difference between what we have a right to do and what we don't have a right to do. And understand, like I said, with a race of beings like who and what we are, when you create from that space of knowing better and doing less, you will reap what you sow. That's just the nature of to me, the nature of the simulation here.
I saw 4.5 years ago, and I haven't eaten meat now in 4.5 years, and I haven't had a cold or a flu since. And so, I used to get sick once or twice a year. But, once I stopped eating meat, I obviously started eating a lot more fruits and vegetables, a lot more nourishment, vitamins. But I haven't been sick since. I did at one point have a headache for like 3 or 4 days, and I don't get headaches where I was feeling a little bit tired, but I've never had the phlegm. I've never had the sore throat, never had the coughing. And, I have, been unscathed during this, this last 2.5 years or whatever, this craziness. And I don't wear the muzzle. I go where I want. And, for some reason, I didn't catch this crazy, thing that's supposedly going around. How's your health?
Hey, listen, I don't think anybody really knows, what's going on inside of us. But all in all, I mean, I can't really complain. I mean, they'll throw out all the usual cliches. Oh, the soy boy, you must be so weak. I mean, I'll tell you, like Mark Passio says it. Why don't you, come over? and grab me and tackle me and see how weak I am without eating animals. You know, they have all these little masculinity games that people like to play where you ain't really man enough if you ain't controlling, dominating, genociding, and death worshipping and feeding off of other beings' flesh. And I just haven't experienced any of that. You know, like I have the energy I need to do what I need to do, and I'm not involved in a wrongdoing. And I haven't really seen any negative effects that everyone keeps talking about. But again, a lot of it's probably the way you go into it. If you go into it with this information, and again, I'm not discrediting or discounting because you'll get all different kind of reactions. I'm not, presuming to know what anybody else's experience is. Maybe you genuinely went into it and found that you couldn't do it for a biological, physical reason. I contend there's more to the story that we could figure out if we chose to, but again, I don't have all the answers. I do, however, understand the simplest idea of beings having their own consciousness and their own ability to choose, and that the one problem we seem to experience all throughout history as men and women is other men and women telling us what we're going to do with our bodies and our property, right? And so, because I don't want it done to me, I don't do it to other beings, and I don't qualify which beings I do it to and don't do it. I don't do it to any beings, insects, bugs. I don't even really like cutting down the plants. I like to take the fruit or the bud or whatever from the plant and let the plant continue to express.
That makes 100% sense. So, I had this person that had on her Facebook wall. She was a galactic high priestess, and she came at me and said that she's like, veganism is Satanism. If you're not eating meat, you're satanic. And have you ever heard that? That someone that chooses not to kill and eat animals and flesh is, a Satanism or evil to not want to kill. It seems quite, an oxymoron to actually think that that would be something that would be on an evil, scale.
Well, what's so fascinating about consciousness and awareness is even the term Satanism in itself is sort of not a misnomer, but it's a misconceptualization of what's going on here and how to describe it. And I will do it from time to time. Right? I will actually engage in what I'm talking about because there's LaVeyan Satanism. There's different aspects and sects to everything that you look into. I don't care if it's Masonry, Satanism, Catholicism. There's different sects and they don't necessarily agree. So ironically, some of the satanic churches actually say we have no right to be killing living beings. So I mean, they may be listen, the bottom line is when it comes down to it, how you could substantiate to me that it's quote unquote satanic, evil, wrong, or bad to not engage in enslaving and genociding other beings and feeding on their flesh. I'm not too sure, how we make these leaps. I mean, again, certain things are clear and apparent to me, and if we survey the field of perspectives, there's a lot of folks out there who believe and say and feel a lot of things, and they really can't substantiate any of it with any kind of demonstrable cause and effect objective logic. It's a very simple experience. If you were a dog, let's go back to like when we were children. If you were a dog or a cat, it's so interesting how the Koreans can't kill dogs and eat them, but we can kill cows and pigs and eat them when cows and pigs are higher consciousness beings than dogs. We just play hypocrite and pick and choose whenever we want, however we want, based on our little culture, our little cult, right? So if you're going to kill these beings, then they're all on the table to be killed and eaten, right? And especially by their logic, okay, this being's a dumbed down lesser being, so why are you killing these ones and not those ones? It's just about what we're used to, what we grow up on. Right? If everybody took a step back from all this and really looked at who and what they were and actually internalized, every one of us has been young in front of one of these animals watching it get its throat slit or its neck broken. And if you haven't, then you've never really been able to internalize what that feels like. If you have, you know damn well you wanted nothing to do with it. But we compartmentalize and go back to the table and then eat that thing and forget about what we just witnessed outside when we were horrified that our own people just killed that being with such a cold, callous, unempathetic countenance, right? I
Yes.
think that it's sickness. I think that a being that could do harm to other beings while they scream and cry and fight and make some kind of a justification, you're no different than your masters. They literally sit around the table saying, look at the dumb cattle slaves lining up to take all of our poison, paying us to kill them. They're such dumbed down slaves. Let's take them for everything they got. Let's feed on them physically and energetically. Let's control, dominate, and cage them. It's called private prisons. We're going to claim it's all for the greater good and that we have a right to do such. Here's a book. We'll point to it. You know, it's all the same behavior, and it's why we continue to see the same cause and effect outcomes. I believe it's one of the reasons. If you don't understand objectively right from wrong, you will, again, those who believe absurdities will commit atrocities. Right? You got a whole bunch of people running around believing absurd justifications for why they have a right to do shit they have no right to do. And therefore, we see so much atrocity mainlined and mainstream as just another walk in the park, right? How many images of violence does the average person see by the time they're of a certain age, projected to us on the black box of Shaitan, right? How many images of corrupt behaviors and reprobate behaviors do we see by the time we're 12 years old, where killing just becomes another part of the culture, right? Oh, we're Italians. It's cute and funny. And yeah, we're real men because we glorify animalistic behavior of killing other beings and having no value for life. I know where you're from, Jesse, but where I'm from, that stuff is mainline at the dinner table. We laugh and giggle at it, and we even become part of that if we let ourselves, right? That's what toxic ego will do. Create a whole version of self that's living backward, out of line with what we're created to be, right? It says, become like a child again, you shall enter the kingdom of heaven. Tell that child to break that chicken's neck. Watch what he's going to do. He's going to be horrified at you, right? And then somewhere along the way, we just learn to accept this stuff.
Yeah, like that that person, that high priest, I said, like you'll know them by their fruits. And I said the only one that's acting satanic is you. You're the one who's bringing this, Satanism into, something that, isn't being part of it. And people will usually tell themselves what they are or what they believe or what their, deficiencies are. You'll hear it by them using that to attack other people with what's really, deficient inside of them.
Yeah, it's projection. When you start to realize the art of projection, you find in most situations, people are not talking to you. They're talking to the version of you that lives inside of them. So, that's why I've learned to not take many things personal, because when I step aside from the emotion I feel in the moment, I go, oh, this person has absolutely no reason for believing or saying what they're saying. And it's actually a description of what they're doing. You'll see this in politics a lot of times. Oh, Putin's going to go ahead and crack a bioweapon and do XYZ. And then we find out later, I don't know if we're allowed, quote unquote, to get political and talk about all this stuff, but it is what it is. We find out later, oh no, it's actually the other side who's creating bioweapons, releasing them on everybody, and they're going to accuse everyone else of doing it so that they can get to that mark first and say, well, you can't use that claim now, because then if anyone uses that claim, they go, well, we said it first. You can't accuse us of what we accused you of first, that we're actually doing that you're not doing. It's basic child psychology in a sense, right? Where you create the benchmark, you create the narrative, you create the plausible deniability for self, while also creating the ability to have to defend for the other party.
Exactly, and why I say you will know them by their fruits. It's like, Justin Trudeau going and saying these convoy truckers, oh, they're Nazis and they're this, but that's because he and his little crew are the Nazis. So they want to use and deflect and call, these people that are opposing them what they actually are.
But now let me give you this. The deeper understanding I've come to, or it was pretty simple for me to have this perspective and come to, is these trucker groups and these folks are, whether they know it or not, they may be well intentioned. They are exactly like the scripture says, of their father, the devil. They're riding around in property that they've registered as state property. They've merged their whole private life with corporations. They are fascists by definition. And again, I'm not saying that they wake up every day and feel like that or even know that. I'm saying by the definition of the merger in state and corporate powers, which is what fascism is, most folks are, by definition, communists, collectivists, socialists. They just don't know it, right? In their day to day life, they're redistributing wealth all the time based on an authoritarian rule. It's called taxation. Find me a trucker who doesn't pay taxes. I'll wait. I'm sorry that the truth is something that a lot of people find to be uncomfortable, but in order for all of us to move past our darkness and co create a better way, we have to observe our darkness and call it out for what it is. We've been raised in and of the system, and it's all completely rubbed off on us to the point where we've become it in a sense. Riding around every day not knowing we are the symbol for socialism, Nazism, and fascism because nobody's ever shown us the words and terms and we've never gone and looked and we think we're well intentioned. But again, the greatest lie is the one closest to truth. I'll hit you with another cliche. Go argue with them, not me. The information's just passing through me, right? Because people will say, oh, how dare you bash the truckers? I even had a woman I'll respect you if you come really correct with me. I had a woman tell me, how dare you bash the truckers? They're well intentioned, blah, blah, blah. We got right down. She said, you know what, Paul? Nobody's going to do what you do. So this is the only option. You don't get it. That one option that nobody's going to do is the only option. Everything else is a false light and a deception. You're deceived. The whole world is in the hands of the dark one. The kingdom of heaven is few because most people can't look at their own darkness, call it out for what it is, and then get out of their own way. They're too busy in entitlement, desire, expectation, and different concepts of egoic consciousness. They have yet to separate their true selves from their false selves.
Being complicit to it means you're giving power to it.
I'll even give you the next dynamic. You can't clog up a bunch of roadways and expect to solve a problem from the same level of consciousness you created it. That's Einstein. Go argue with him. I think he's long been dead. But you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness you created it from. If we say these folks don't have a right to interfere with our forward movement, our right to travel, and different rights that we have, how do you get the right to do it? Getting in the road with a bunch of trucks and blocking grandma from getting home or to get to the hospital or get her insulin. And guess what? They gave you that plan so they could come out and run that narrative. Look at all these right-wing extremists blocking grandma from getting her insulin. They knew how to play you against yourself because they took your misunderstanding of right from wrong objectively and got you to engage in a my freedom movement. When you engage in my freedom movement, someone else has to lose their freedom. That's not how we solve this. Take your plates off. Unregister the car. Record it. Men and women record. Slaves register. They give their property to the king for him to regulate it. Right? Stop licensing your rights. You don't have to convert your rights into privileges and benefits and license them and contract out and pay for them. You're born with them straight from God. That's the promise in this nation that people fought and died for in all common law nations. Stand on that. And this dynamic will stop. If you continue to engage in wrong behaviors that you don't have a right to do, claiming you're well-intentioned, you will manifest more wrongdoings and more chaos. You have to learn to govern yourselves completely. That means take complete accountability and responsibility on both sides. You will be governed by what you do and don't do.
Do you have an optimistic view of the next 6 months?
I don't need to have an optimistic or a pessimistic view because I know who and what I am and what I'm here to do. And as long as I continue to do the next right thing, I will be assured a place in the kingdom of heaven. If it's not externally, it will at least be internally, right? And I suspect the hereafter. I suspect that my karmic loop will be completed and I will transcend this earthly dynamic of incarnation. The word carne means meat, to take on a meat suit. I don't need to continue to take on meat suits and come to this arena and learn one basic principle. Stop taking what don't belong to you. It's a simple understanding. All the 10 commandments can be boiled down to one principle. Stop taking what doesn't belong to you. You don't have a right to steal life that doesn't belong to you, or property, or the truth. It's called lying, taking the truth out of a situation. Stop stealing, right? If we would just stop stealing, And again, lying is a form of stealing. Just speak the truth, express the truth, seek the truth, live the truth, and this all goes away. The more that we continue to create false versions of self and false versions of life and the creation and reality and what's already been put here with law, false versions of the law we call the legal system, as long as we keep creating false corruptions and false narratives and buying into false belief systems, we will continue to generate chaos and destruction. And therefore, evil folks will come forth to govern other evil folks, because again, evil just means living backward. There's no emotion attached to it. There will always be someone to come forth to quote unquote help the people living backwards to govern themselves. When you stop needing to have people come forth to help you govern yourself, they will cease to be there, right? Everything is as it should be. Everything is cause and effect. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, I'm going to create a saying off the top of my head now. When the slave is disempowered, the master appears. It's the same dynamic. If you're ready to learn and ready to seek the truth, the universe will open up to you and you'll become completely empowered and be able to face all challenges with a sense of faith in truth, meaning, and purpose. If you continue to operate from a space of fear, that was love, right? Love and care, two base emotions. You continue to operate from a fear space, you will generate darkness and chaos for yourselves and each other, and someone will come in to regulate that as they should. Everything is as it should be. Everything has a function in this realm, even what we call darkness and evil. We see it every night when the sun goes down, right? There's complete polarity and function and yin and yang on all sides.
You trust the universe?
Absolutely. Everything that we are and that we have is provisional. Like the founders talked about providence. Every time that they, and again, now you have to decide, do you believe in these stories and teachings, and the version of his story, and the folklore. But as it's written in a lot of these cultures, when everybody thought they were down and out and couldn't find a way out and didn't know what they were going to do, something just happened to come along. A man rides up, gives a speech, everyone signs the documents. We move on with the experiment of a self-governing nation, a republic, where the people have all the power, and we're through with the king's rule, the monarchy, the aristocracy, the autocracy, the technocracy. That's what makes America great. Certain folks will talk about making America great again. America, if it was great, and I won't argue whether it was or it wasn't, but if you subjectively believe, I think it's an objective understanding. If you believe that America was great or had greatness in it, doesn't mean it was without fault. It was only because the men and women who made up that land were great within themselves, right? Now we have to look at what is the concept of greatness. What truly makes a man or woman great, right? In the history books or in our everyday life. What do we look at as qualities synonymous with greatness? And you will get back to what I just spoke about for 2 hours, going on 15 minutes now, which is ethics, morals, principles, objective logic, and the ability to co-create one's own reality in the face of adversity, despite adversity, not becoming a victim of adversity, a lot of which we create ourselves and don't want to take ownership of.
Sandy wants to know what your thoughts on the Bible is.
The Bible, like any other spiritual teaching, probably has a lot of truth in it. It probably also has a lot of toxic male ego, collectivist twisting and turning, which tends to happen when you take a truth and you give it to a bunch of people with a limited consciousness who haven't really necessarily done a lot of self work and are victims of the culture that they grew up in. Again, the Bible, from our understanding, is 30 books cut out of it. To correct me where I'm wrong here, there's tons of books cut out of it, tons of passages cut out of it. There's passages that are left in it that talk about, from my understanding, it being okay to take humans as slaves. All types of divisive, destructive, um, predatory concepts that come up when you see the division and the separation rather than the similarity and the wholeness. So, I think that when we talk about the King James Version, a king sanctioned a version of an original scripture and teaching, which encompassed a whole bunch of experiences, right, and circumstances. And within that, you have, like any other cultural teaching, a lot of great information and a lot of twisted. And again, I'm not white knighting when I say male ego. It tends, and correct me if I'm wrong, throughout history to be groups of men who sit around building, warring, scribing, scribbling, doing busyness. The word is business, but I will say busyness. It's typically not the women, right, doing all this. So again, I don't ever want it to be perceived as me being, this PC white knighter. I will call it as it is because it tends to be a male ego dominator consciousness that envelops societies and causes a destruction while also claiming to be the savior and protector, right? The same way I know I've done in my own life and my relationships. Here comes Paulie. He's going to save the day and screw everything up and then try to take credit for it and say it was a good thing because he has a need to be validated and accepted and have a place not only amongst other people, but above other people, right? Again, we're back to minding your own busyness. We're back to staying in your place and knowing your role. We're back to conquering yourself rather than nature, the elements, and other tribes and other lands, right? And other women, other genders. Because one thing we typically like to do with the male ego is conquer the other gender one way or the other. So when we observe self, right, and we stop playing games with ourselves and we start to be real with ourselves and others, that's what the word confidence, the root word is confide, confidence. That's how we gain true confidence, is by taking a look at who and what we are and how we create throughout history the same situations and circumstances over and over. So get, just for the fun of it, Jesse, hit me with that question one more time because I got to know where I went with it from where we started.
What do you think of the Bible?
Okay, so not too bad. I didn't go off too much to left field. But
Well,
yeah, you could ask me the same thing about the Talmud, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I'll give you the same answer for every text, every scripture, every creation of a belief system that has a lot of truth in it, but also has a lot of toxicity in it based on the time and the people that it was written by and of.
what do you say to someone who is firmly set on the Bible is the word of God and you must follow it, and there's no other outlook, but the Bible is the book and God gave it to us and that's it. There's no other interpretation, but you have to live by everything the Bible says.
Well, like I said, the problem is then you'd have to get into which sect, which Bible, which culture we're talking about, which version, which king sanctioned it, how many they left out, the Book of James, all the rest. Then you'd have to get into who's teaching it, what is the understanding of it, because you could get one Bible and 10 people, and they'll all teach it 10 different ways and not necessarily come to the same outcome. So there, again, we have the failing that even if the Bible was the best, like they say, basic instructions before leaving Earth, it's the best thing ever. It's the manual, the handbook for human consciousness. It would have to be taught or understood and perceived by somebody who had that ability, that acumen, and that willful discipline. Which, again, this is one thing we notice is pervasive in all aspects and proficiencies in society is most folks are incompetent. They cannot compete with somebody who's actually put themselves completely into what they do. So it's a very rare breed of person, it seems nowadays, who completely puts themselves into what they do, because most folks are interested in what they're going to get out of what they do, not who they're going to become with what they do. Right. So again, somebody who says that this book is the only way and points to any book is probably a dogmatic, is probably someone who's involved in some form of cult or bondage where they've grown up believing or they've had an experience and misinterpreted as the all, right? Because I always feel I like the logic exercise. If you were born in the middle of a jungle, right, a rainforest somewhere, and had no way to access the Bible, just no physical way for that book to get in your hands, are you condemned? Do you have any lack of access to a kingdom of heaven and an understanding of how to comport oneself to get a desirable outcome that not only serves oneself but serves the community? No, it's inherent. It's part of who and what we are. It's, again, okay, They'll tell me the Bible's the ultimate word of God. Did you listen to any of the words the Christed being said in there? Because he said, "Come out of her, my people," when he spoke about the Pharisees and Sadducees in the churches. He was a being speaking of conscience and awareness, not of hierarchy and regalia, right? And memorabilia and buildings and forms. He was speaking of function, who and what we are and what are we doing and creating in the world. He wasn't someone pointing to the books. He was someone who was rebelling from the books of his time. Is it a coincidence? Right? And I'll have some folks come and say, "You speak just like our Lord and our God, the Christ did, Jesus, Cristo." I go, "You know, he was Mexican, right? Don't let that upset you. That's a joke." But, the reality of it is like, you'll have some folks who say I'm a complete rebuker of the law, that I'm Satan himself, and that I'm the Christed being reincarnate. Within the middle, somewhere there is a truth and an understanding, and it pervades everybody's consciousness and awareness. The being said, when they asked him, "Is it you who is God?" He says, "Are we all not son and daughters of the Most High? Greater things than I you shall do." He never once said he was the Son of God. So I don't know where all these Bible teachers and followers and worshipers get the idea that Jesus Christ is the only God, the Son of God, the Lord, because he was literally asked that and said, "We are all extensions and creations of the Most High consciousness. And if you apply yourself and seek truth and become disciplined, you will do even greater things than I have done." But everyone missed that part of the story. You know why? Because now we're back to accountability and responsibility. Everyone wants the opiate of the masses, which they say religion is another cliche. They don't want the actual teaching that is in that religion, which is, you have to be the Messiah in the mirror. You have to be the one to bring the light and the truth to the world. You have to take full accountability of who and what you are and what you create, and responsibility to life on life's terms, which means you might have to hang on a cross like I did. No one wants that role. They want to sit back, do very little, and wait on someone else to do their work for them. And now you can substitute Joe Biden, Donnie Trump, or Jesus Cristo himself. Everybody wants a savior. Nobody wants to be the one to save themselves and create with other saviors to save ourselves, right? And then they'll tell me that's New Age Satanism, to actually take on a role and to embody godliness, holiness, righteousness, purpose, meaning, and to sacrifice and be disciplined and willful. Those are all bad qualities, right? But sitting back and hoping on a savior and believing on something and not wavering from it, regardless of how much evidence you see, that's not blind belief at all. Belief, the middle of the word being lie, of course, right? I digress.
No, that was perfect, Jack. No, that was perfect. You're right on the money, man. Jack has said something he said, "Many are devoted fans of Jesus who worship a book and waiting for someone to save them." They're worshiping a book instead of, living life.
It's so much easier. That again, if we knowledge of self is knowledge of the universe. If we look at ourselves and what we tend to do, we will always create what we want and ignore what we don't want inside of our minds to substantiate the reality we're living and to take the path of least resistance. It's a lot easier to show up to church once a week, to claim to be a devout follower, to believe all you want with them feelings on this one thing, but then actually do nothing in the world to co-create what you want to see. And then put other people down who are actually taking on the burden, the accountability, the responsibility to be the change they want to see. It'd be one thing if you didn't do nothing and wanted to play that game. It's another thing when you want to be hypocritical and cowardly and fearful rather than faithful. I always have to ask these people, if you have such a faith in the truth that you live and this God, then why won't you stand on it? Why do you shriek from it? Why do you run from it? Why are you not testifying from the highest mountains and living that truth? At best, you only talk about it, right? You are a servant, and then they'll hit me with the Romans. Oh, everything of this world is ordained by God. So we follow all the laws of the state, the codes and the legal procedures. My understanding is just like the being taught. There's the law of man, which is of the devil, because it's of the mind of man, which is imperfect. And there's the law of the universe, which is perfect and orderly and has creation and number and mathematics and and chemistry and all this stuff written and sewn together. And if you follow one, you're not following the other. You can't worship two masters. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So all these fake ass Christians who keep telling me about how they follow this being and worship this being, if you won't be like this being, then you're of the world. What did the man tell those people of his day when they said, give us Barabbas? They chose the worldly being, just like they choose Trump and Biden, rather than living the truth and being of the people, by the people, for the people. They choose leadership of the same pool of corrupt reprobates we see over and over again, and they keep rebuking the Christed consciousness and the light. These paradigms have not changed, right? The Christed being in the scripture only cursed two classes of beings, lawyers and bankers. He eventually got violent with the bankers, which is out of his character. He took the whip out on him and they killed him for that because he was never supposed to get violent. He got out of his character. He was an imperfect being. He cursed the fig tree. The Christians will tell me, how dare you, Paul, you get up there and say motherfucker? Well, the being who you worship cursed the fig tree. He cursed out a plant one day because he got fed up and tired of the life and seeing all the slaves continue to create all this. And this is an example, right? They show us these stories and parables and these examples. These beings are not perfect. You created a religion, right? You created a story around somebody who was an imperfect being who was striving to do the impossible, which was to wake up a bunch of slaves who continue to choose over and over again their own destruction, their own disempowerment, and the destruction of their own children, telling them stop bringing your children to the pit and throwing them into Molech, believing that the state is God and that they control the sun coming up every day. Nothing's changed. A lot of these religious folks getting vaccines and wearing masks telling me about their God. They know not who and what they are and what they serve. They are in the hands of the dark one and deceived. And if they don't have a direct relationship with what we call God, I don't even like the term, but if they don't have a direct relationship with that being as the Christed being in the scripture taught, come out of the churches. You are the temple. The temple is right here. That's why we call it the temple, here and here. Unification of thoughts, emotions, and actions, the sacred Trinity. If you are not living from that lifestyle, then you know not who and what you are, and you're probably of your father, the devil. So I tell you now here today, much like the Christed being told you back in that day, because truth has not changed. I am the same today as I was yesterday, as I will be tomorrow. Come out of her, my people. You are deceived, right? Reunite with the resource, the true self, who and what you are and what you were born to be. And stop being misled by the misleaders and the folks who only seek to live in this world to attain glorification and monetary materialized gain, which is the majority of folks. Let's just be real about it.
Yeah, true hypocrisy. And he came to destroy religion, to tell people that they can have their own relationship with God. And what did they do? They made a religion out of it, and they put crosses glorifying his crucifixion. People wear, things that he's been crucified. It's pretty crazy what they've done with something that was supposed to set them free.
The state and its actors will always come in, and again, like certain secret societies will tell you, when you need an enemy, we will provide you with one. When you need a hero, we'll provide you with one. The state and its actors are all too ready, especially in that time and in all times, to come in, take a teaching and an understanding, censor it, feed it back to you, and give you complete disempowerment. Oh, just sit back and believe on that being. He's going to come back from the dead and save us all. Meanwhile, everything that being taught went down the drain, and you must have not listened or embodied a word of it. And that's exactly the way the state and its actors want, is a sanitized religion, which is formalized, that is connected to the state. That's why all these churches get their little tax breaks and all the rest. It's a formalized unification of church and state, the same way you see these aren't necessarily Christians, but it's all kind of starts to be the same deal, where you'll see the who was the guy back in the day, Jerry Falwell, and these well-known religious leaders with their symbols on TV of the cross and the crown, the unification of church and state. So the majority of the access of religion that you get in spiritual teaching is filtered through the state and its actors, and therefore the media, right? In ancient times, it was called the Medes and the Medea. We now call it the media, the folks who use lights, colors, sounds, and energies to disturb, dis-ease, and disenchant their enemies, right? So they've taken an understanding, 80, 90% truth at times, weaved in 10 to 20% of a lie. And it's just that disempowering that everyone buys in and believes it, but then misses the main point of the story and the experience.
One thing I say is that if no God would ever say obey your government, especially with what we see what the government's doing, and if that one lie is in this book, how can you trust anything else in it?
You know what God would tell you? God would tell you, look at the words and terms which don't change and the understanding beneath it. Look at how it all works and comes together. Look at the idea of all the folks out there who do need to be governed, right? Because there's a lot of anarchist folks who say, this is all bad and wrong. We want to abolish all of it. Guess what? You're the same people who, when you went and did that up in Seattle, you whined and cried when people pulled guns out and you tried to call 911. So you can't have it all ways at all times, right? Whatever fits you. So make no mistake, the worldly and earthly masters, the builders of the systems and institutions here that govern the rabble slaves who can't govern themselves, it is ordained. But for the folks who can govern themselves, who are conscious and understand cause and effect, there is no place for them to be governed because they are governed by something higher than the state that works through us. There's certain folks who know that and live that, and there's other folks who don't. And for the folks who don't, they need to be governed because we see it every day, right? We see it in our own lives, in our own relationships, in our own families, folks who cannot govern themselves and wind up harming themselves or others, and then giving over their power and begging others to come in and save them from themselves. That's why we're here. Everything is as it should be. If we want it to change, we have to be the change. If we continue to act like a bunch of slaves, we will manifest a bunch of masters. It's that simple. You know, you're in bondage to your emotions. Everybody who chooses to put what they feel and what they believe over what's true, right, and demonstrable and can be explained, right? Because even if it's not demonstrable, if it's a metaphysical principle, a sixth sense, explain it, make it make sense, right? I think I can do that in a lot of areas. I listen to other people talk and they make these leaps, right? Because it's all appeal to emotion. There is no actual lifestyle principle and A to Z understanding in which these folks are living by. It's some form of belief system and cult that they've gotten secondhand and never even lived the authentic experience of. Imagine the Christed being in that scripture pointing to a book. Imagine him going, all right, assemble, get around, folks. Here we go. And then he gets a teleprompter out, right? Like these other folks we know do. Or he gets a book out and says, okay, I'm going to now give you the word of God. And he starts like pointing to a book and reciting scripture written by some guy named Frank, John, Eddie, and Joe. Nonsense. I don't know how else to give it to you. I could give it to you just straight street level New York common sense. Does that make any sense to you? So if that being didn't need a book to access God and communicate it, what makes you think any of us do, especially when he said we don't need that? I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss. I'm not at a loss for words, but I'm at a loss of an understanding other than the basic, which is, like I said before, true accountability and responsibility takes willful and disciplined action and sacrifice, and most people ain't got it in them. I know I didn't for most of my life.
And if you've done any research, you know that the people that are, kind of the masters, the rulers, the ones that's in charge of this paradigm, they wouldn't allow you to have some kind of a book if it didn't serve them. They wouldn't allow people to have this information out unless it did benefit them and their control.
On some level, yeah, it does seem to be that way, right? We see other communications which are kind of blacklisted and censored, and they're even lesser text. They're just kind of text about worldly understandings, facts, and information. So, yeah, you would have to suspect an understanding and a teaching that was extremely empowering, that would allow people to unlock their minds, heart, and spirit from a system that profits from them remaining in ignorance and darkness. Yes, there's going to be a great it goes back to even the ancient teachers of a lot of this stuff. They didn't even want to willfully teach the average person this information because they knew it would do no good. You had to take vows. You had to be silent for years You have to really show devotion and dedication and discipline, because you know what? At the end of the day, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. You know, if you start giving this information to people and they don't know how to use it, it can become a negative and a bad thing. I don't necessarily take that perspective on it. I think that at the end of the day, where we are on this timeline and what needs to happen is clear and evident. If you can amalgamate this and communicate it from a street level, practical spirituality, right, state of consciousness where people can get it and understand it and apply it, I've seen the results. Right, I've seen it even in my own life. People say, "Well, I'm done, I'm out, and I'm going to apply myself." And I make sure I give them the caveat: we're not selling dreams here. You may go to jail and you may die. If you can accept those, right, as your duty and your obligation to your country, to your land, to your planet, you know, to your beingness, to your true responsibility and accountability. If you can really accept that and move into that and be better for it, then you've won the game. You know, so it can get heavy, it can get deep at times, but I contend that you're not going to find a freer place within self other than pushing your comfort zone and your boundaries and challenging yourself to rise to the occasion to see what you're really capable of, and stop accepting less for yourself. A being who allows other beings to tell them what to do and when has accepted less for themselves. You know better. You're able to do better. And if you're not, then there's a place for you as well. Like I say, right? It's completely balanced understanding and philosophy. I'm not an overthrower of anything. I understand, like I've said a few times in this conversation, I understand everything has its purpose and its function.
What's your thoughts when people say understand or understand? So, because of the whole understand, I don't stand under, people are now changing it to understand. They're trying not to use the word understand, and they, use understand instead.
I get that perspective and I could go along with that. I'm for people changing their language however they have to in order for them to speak into reality more of what they mean. Because it's important that we say what we mean and mean what we say. So I have no problem with that, the idea of understanding, right? And we can get into the idea of overstanding. The concepts that I've been giving you, I say understanding in a colloquial sense because we're talking and it just, can sound odd at times. But yeah, you can call it an understanding and an overstanding. I'm not standing under or being sort of governed or contained or blanketed by these concepts. I understand all of it and how it all applies. So I have an overstanding of it. I've moved beyond it. I'm here now to co create, do what I've come to do, to teach others and not be interfered with. And anybody who interferes with me is a clear wrongdoer because I don't present any direct threat to anybody and I don't have any malice of forethought. And those are the things necessary in any criminal interaction to bring a claim forward. I've never demonstrated such, and I still continue to not demonstrate such. As a matter of fact, I demonstrate quite the opposite. I demonstrate the caringness, the will, and the discipline to continue to sacrifice my time, energy, and attention to bring to not only myself, right? Because that's, I'm not going to act like I'm a holier than thou being. A big reason why I do this and continue to do this is so I can live okay within myself and be a free being. And then I can bring that to the world and help others with that process. Because again, it starts with the heroin, it starts with the pills, it starts with people who make a bunch of money and can't enjoy it because their perspective is off, right? It's that whole cliche money can't buy happiness. So you may have all the things in your life and be willing to stand on freedom and need to do so because you can't really enjoy. That's an interesting sort of dynamic that you can make a movie out of where you have folks coming to Paulie living in the car in the tent who they have millions of dollars, but I quote unquote have something that they don't, which is the understanding of how to completely free and liberate oneself from bondage on those levels, right? Because of being a man, you tell a man he's got his cars, he's got his woman, he's got the money in the bank, and his life is dictated and regulated by another man. Do you think he's ever going to have true self respect or true access to a level of confidence where he can talk to somebody else and be felt and heard and also have the same process on the other end? No, there's going to be so much insecurity, neurosis, fear, disempowerment. That's the nature of those positions. And that's why this thing is so great and so beautiful because that weakness, that level is there as a governor, like we call it. Once we go past that, we now have access to this whole other world, like Plato's cave. We come out of the cave and see the real world, and now we can enjoy either everything, like if we have a lot of stuff, or very little. Either way, see, it's a system of faith that permeates and pervades all outside people, places, and things, situations, and circumstances. That's the key, right?
100%. I just wanted to mention to everybody on the YouTube channel right now, every once in a while, and it's been happening a little more frequently, there's this spam kind of sex kind of comment that comes up. And here on StreamYard, I've had to block it 3 times now. So a couple of people were saying they were reporting the comment and stuff. So here on StreamYard, when it comes up, I just instantly block user and then it deletes it off my page. I'm not sure what happens on the YouTube channel if it deletes the comments afterwards, but I appreciate you guys were talking about reporting the comment and stuff like that. It's happened, I think, 3 or 4 times. I've had to block it on this, on this live right now. I wanted to kind of end off with
You know what that means? Let me. I got to be rude like a New Yorker and cut you off. I'm sorry, Jesse, but I just want to commend you, because that must mean that you're doing something, whether it's with me here today or just what you're doing in general. You must be having a positive effect, because that's what draws in the attacks from the dark side, the calculated, coordinated attacks of pretending to post sex links to try to get you censored and banned. So, we salute that person. Thank you for our validation. It tells us that we're doing what's true and what's right, because that's what would draw those kind of attacks from the dark side. So that's a positive thing. As long as we keep some government, right, on folks who can't govern themselves. We were just speaking about that.
Totally, and I've had 2 YouTube channels deleted already, so this is the third YouTube channel. So, like you said, doing something right, I guess. I just try to, anybody that's talking against the injections or against the stolen election, I just take it off of YouTube. We're on 5 other different platforms, so we're right now live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and then we upload to Rumble, BitChute, and Telegram. So every once in a while, I'll take one off of YouTube just so we can somehow build up the channel.
Yep. Sounds good, man.
So my last kind of question was, what's your thoughts on the shape of the Earth? Are we a spinning ball going 66,600 miles an hour, or are we more of a flat dimension, or does that even warrant a response from you?
Normally I wouldn't, but I guess we'll feed the trolls. Why not? It's as good a time as any. They have to eat something, right? They have to be fed, so why not? Someone's got to do it. It's okay though, because certain things are apparent. They tell me they can see the curvature. I don't see it. I'm not contending that it's flat. It definitely doesn't appear to be round to me. And we'll go back, since we've been doing it all episode. If you want to call it an episode or this communication, you will know the beast and its system by its number, and its number is 666. So when they give you the narrative of the same numbers that all line up and add up, and they tell you about the Baal Earth, right? We understand that the etymology of Baal is Baal, Baal. Um, they'd love for you to, I guess, believe that you live on a Baal Earth that's 666,000 miles an hour. And, I think they do what, 93, the number of base consciousness, all this other gematria, numerology, predictive programming, mockery, slash sorcery, slash performance. You know, it's fascinating to me. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to claim that it's flat. It's just that when I look around and observe and report, that's what it seems to be. It seems to be more flat than it is round. When I see the substantiation for what they call round, it seems to be bizarre and ridiculous, like a lot of the other narratives, similar to the pictures that we supposedly see of the little round Earth. It's the same shape and size, and the continents change sizes, and the clouds are like always the same. And yeah, I don't know really what to say to anybody. Many will look with their eyes and not see. The ears listen and not hear. With the heart, not get the sense of what's going on. Most folks are going down the yellow brick road, searching for the midget behind the curtain who's completely, that's a politically incorrect term, Jesse. The little person who's behind the curtain who seems to be very upset and angry and disempowered, and really is using a bunch of smoke and mirrors and screens to take power over the beings who say they don't have a mind, a heart, or courage. So they'll continue to go down the road to the wizard, the quote unquote wizard, to try to get a better understanding of themselves in the world. And this is what they'll keep coming back with. And I'll keep laughing at it and I guess lamenting it and crying for them. And then also realizing once again that it's the most beautiful, ugly, perfectly imperfect system that you could have. Because again, if you're willing to continue to buy into utter nonsense, why shouldn't someone sell it?
And what I say is that they lie and deceive about just about everything. So why wouldn't they be doing it about this? And we don't ever see anything factual or valid. And we see a lot of, stuff in NASA from studios and all this kind of stuff. So they're just showing themselves, exposing themselves as a big fraud that they are.
They even go as far as, and I've gone down these rabbit holes in the past, and I don't really look at it anymore because I've kind of put it to bed as, like you said, you're never going to get truthful and accurate information. There's no point in looking in and arguing about it because that's part of the deception and disempowerment is they want everyone fighting over what shape the earth is while they cage it. What's the difference what shape the earth is other than what we're doing while we're here, right? So, again, that's why I don't mind. Everybody can go crazy and fight about it. I have no, stake in the outcome. I have no dog in that fight. All I'm concerned and focused on is who we are and what we're doing while we're here. I'll leave that argument to folks that have way too much time on their hands, probably because they're not doing more or becoming more, and they have time to sit around and argue with other folks what shape this place is, right?
Yeah, brother. Well, this was amazing. This is the first time we've ever got a chance to talk. I saw you on your couple of your videos, talking to these policy enforcers, and I was like, wow, I like this guy. I'm like, hey, you got some balls, and you're not afraid to speak your mind. So really glad that we connected and that you came here to share more of yourself, and I got to pick your brain. And we've got a lot of people here that definitely are new subscribers to you, and people that are probably going to look for you to maybe help them or assist them or whatever it is that they may be, or vice versa, because you're a good soul, and I really appreciate you spending the time here with us today, Paul.
Sure, yeah, and if like you said, if people want, they can hit me up on as days go on. I guess I'm reticent to say it, but I guess I'll be completely candid. I've created a TikTok. It can be kind of a sad day. I'm sure a lot of people might be shocked who know me to hear it, but I did take the plunge. I created a TikTok as well as an Instagram, and the whole deal. So I am present on all the quote unquote platforms, and I'm bringing some interesting or fun videos that people seem to enjoy. And if nothing else, I enjoy being a part of it, and I speak to myself in a lot of these talks as much as I speak to anybody else, right? Because all criticism is self criticism when there's only oneself. So a lot of the inspiration in what I do is talking to myself in the camera as much as any other version of self watching. So it seems to work for now. And yeah, if people want to email me, maybe you could throw up the email if you have it there, but it's consciousness.is.rising@gmail.com. And like I said, I'm also on the other platforms. So if you look up Paul Enslaved, you'll find me on pretty much everything at this point. Whether I'm on there or communicating, that's going to be a different story, but I'm sure I'll get to it at some point. And yeah, I have some donation links up there as well. And going forward, I'll be providing the ability because believe it or not, one thing I didn't realize coming into this, and that's why I think it's a great thing for everybody to get involved in. It will renew and restore your faith in humanity. Um, I have had people support me in great ways, financially being one of them. So people have asked me for more ability to do that going forward in the future and to come down and work together and create community and barter and trade. So I'm open to all that, and it's all on the YouTube, really, is where I put my stuff. We got some strikes and some guidelines and going back and forth with them and that whole deal, but that's part of the game. So it's all good.
Is this am I spelling your email address correct?
Um, yeah, consciousness .is.rising@gmail.com. Correct. And if you go on the YouTube, um, you'll see like, what I'm up to, past stuff, different communications. I was doing a weekly situation before I lost signal, middle of nowhere. So, yeah, like I said, there's donation information on there if you want to help me out with what I'm doing. But if not, I'm open to just communicating and helping folks if I can and growing the community and the network. Because, like, what else are we here to do? You know, create a living and an environment and a community for ourselves that we can feel good about and, works for ourselves and each other.
Awesome, brother. Well, stay blessed. We really appreciate you, and like this was amazing. I really enjoyed this thoroughly. I think you're a great guy, and just keep doing what you're doing. And we look forward to maybe bringing you on again down the road, and just see where you're at, and see what's happening if you're open to something like that again.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely felt good. I had a good energy. I definitely enjoyed it. Uh, I was in the groove, so to speak, today, I feel like. And I think a big part of that is kind of what you bring to the table and your energy and all that. So, yeah, man, I mean, I'm definitely open to it. I'm here, same deal. We'll get together. I'll drive down the road, catch some signal, and we can do our thing, And again, really, at the end of the day, besides our enjoyment for this, hopefully, faithfully rather, see, hope is much like fear. It's a hollow emotion. Faithfully, this will help to inspire others and call others to willful, disciplined action so we can create, like realistically, we can create a new world for ourselves. It can be done.
It's what I'm here to do, brother, and I ain't stopping until we're finally free here.
Good deal, man. We're on board.
Uh, Linda says, "What's your name of your YouTube channel again?" It's scrolling at the bottom there, Linda. It's youtube.com/Paul Unslaved.
Yeah, even if because I just gave that to Jesse real quick because I believe I did change it. But all you have to do is go on YouTube and search. You can even put it in a search engine. I'm pretty much the only results that come up under Paul Unslave. So I mean, if you throw that in a search engine or in the YouTube, you're gonna come up with this big pretty face of mine, right? You're gonna see it immediately, and then you're gonna know that is my locate. That is where I'm living, as they call it on YouTube. That is my address.
So 6'3", 250. They call you tiny.
There you go. They call me Tiny for other reasons, Jesse, but it's a family show. I am half Irish, right? I'm only half Italian, half Irish.
You're awesome, brother. Well, thanks again for spending this time. Thank you all for being here, part of the Missing Link. It's Love Inspiring New Knowledge is the acronym for Link, and that's what we're trying to do every day. Here we've had 3 great interviews. Tomorrow we've got Dr. Roger Hodgkinson. He's a pathologist who was speaking out in Canada against all these injections. He was kind of one of the doctor faces of the Freedom Convoy. And we're going to be talking to him tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then for our 200th episode, we're going to have Dr. Amanda Vollmer. She's going to be debating Dr. Paul Cottrell, germ theory versus terrain theory. And there's some people believe you get sick because it's your terrain that gets sick, and you fix the terrain, you fix the environment, you fix the food, you don't get sick. I'm actually kind of living testimony to that. And some people believe if you sneeze, that you can catch something from somebody else, and that's the whole allopathic medicine. So it's going to be an amazing debate. I've never hosted a debate before, so I just put in some random times, and let's just hope this works out well, because we want to make the 200th episode of the Missing Link special. So again, thanks a lot, Paul. We'll see you around, and just stay blessed, brother.
All right, and thank you, Jesse. And I want in on that on one of these future debates. And when you bring the trucker convoy and these other folks on, I want in on. I want you to put me in a little square down at the bottom, and I'm going to be annoying and throw out questions, and we're gonna mix it up a little bit, because that's what we need to do, right? The truth doesn't need to be guarded, right? We don't have to beat around the bush. The truth will come out one way or the other. So I appreciate you, and I look forward to our next communication here.
Okay, love you, brother. Love you all, and we'll see you all again tomorrow on The Missing Link. Bye, everyone. Bye, Paul.
See you later, Jess.